Oh, thank you.
We ready to start?
Here, you know about iPhones. A whole lot.
Good morning. We'll get the program started this morning. Here comes Curator Russell. He's on his way. It was inspiring to hear those two student athletes talk this morning, and I was particularly impressed with the values-based comments that they had to make. Obviously, they're in a culture in the athletic department here that places a great deal of importance on values and culture, and that was very evident this morning. And those of us that know Mike Alden know where that community-based service emphasis comes from. It comes from the top of the athletic department. Mike is very, very focused and places high importance on those things, and it's evident that it's passed down to those students. So a hearty kudos to Mike Alden and all of the athletic department for their emphasis on athletics and community values. This morning we have an opportunity to honor Dr. Lamb and Nancy for years of service to the university. As you know, Dr. Lamb retired last March, and we're not going to let the occasion pass without recognizing him. We passed a resolution in June to honor his service with the university, but he was at sick bay, I think, in June and couldn't be here. But Gordon, you came to the helm of the university at a very pivotal time in its history, and you stayed on board longer than you had anticipated as a result of the request of President Forsey. And we owe you a particularly intense debt of gratitude. You came at a time as an interim, but you were more than an interim president. You didn't act like an interim at all. You got some things done. You started some initiatives. And I think probably one of the most important things that you did for the board is that you gave us a sense of confidence in your leadership that we could go about our business of finding a new president in a timeline that met our needs. We didn't have to get in a hurry to fill that spot because we were so confident in your leadership. And as a result, we have President Forsey sitting down there at the end of the table. So thank you very much for that. We very much appreciate all the things that you have done for the university, particularly that. We passed a resolution in June, and I'm going to take the liberty of reading that resolution because it highlights some of the things that you've done for the university. Whereas Gordon H. Lamb, Ph.D., served with distinction as interim president of the University of Missouri System from April 9, 2007 until February 18, 2008. And whereas he served as executive vice president of the University of Missouri System from February the 18th, 2008 until March 1, 2009. And whereas during the presidential search process and transition period, his assistance and advisement were invaluable. And whereas his commitment to the university includes serving as interim chancellor of the University of Missouri, Kansas City from February of 99 till March of 2000. And whereas he exemplified the university's mission of teaching, research, service, and economic development. And whereas, while serving as executive vice president, he demonstrated his dedication to the expansion of online education. And whereas he was committed to alleviating the state and nation's shortage of healthcare professionals through the Caring for Missouri initiative. And whereas he was a strong advocate in Jefferson City for investing in higher education and freedom of research. And whereas further demonstrating his dedication to higher education, he has served in leadership positions at many other prestigious institutions across the country, and whereas he serves as an ambassador for the arts through his passion and participation in choral music, and whereas Mrs. Lamb so graciously and capably served the University of Missouri as First Lady during Dr. Lamb's period as interim president, and her time and efforts were greatly appreciated. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Curators, on behalf of the students, faculty, staff, and alumni of the University of Missouri system, and on behalf of the citizens of the state of Missouri, does hereby adopt this resolution in appreciation of the dedicated and devotion service of Dr. Gordon H. Lamb. Gordon, would you and Nancy come forward so we can present this resolution to you?
Chairman Fraser, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. Actually, after this year, it's a pleasure to be anywhere. I did check on this as they presented it to me just to be sure there were nobody abstained. I think we're okay on that. I do want to thank you very much. It was a privilege and a real pleasure to work with a set of vice presidents that are extraordinary, with faculty and staff of all 4 campuses, and to work with the Board of Curators during the period of time that I was able to serve. So it was an opportunity that I enjoyed. I enjoyed working with all the people, and I enjoyed the opportunity to present the university to people in the state. Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Everyone around this table up here is aware of the reason for Don Downey's absence. For the rest of you that may not know, Don's father passed away earlier this week, so he is taking care of family obligations this week, and that is the reason for his absence. Welcome to the University of Missouri Curators meeting at the arena. It's fitting that on the eve of the Tigers game against the Longhorns, we're conducting our board meeting near the hub of athletic action here. We wish our Tigers luck with the Longhorns tonight. And I noticed somebody had a button on last night. I think maybe it was Cindy that said "shorten the horns." I hope we do that tomorrow night. This board meeting is being live audio streamed via the web, and for the first time, this meeting will have live, get this, tweeting. This means that those interested in our discussions and actions can follow us on Twitter and virtually real-time updates, compliments of our Strategic Communications Department. They have been tweeting other university news and information for some time now, so today's tweets are expansion of their social media program. I encourage anyone interested in following us through that mechanism. They can go on to twitter.com/UMCurators. And Jennifer put that in my little comments because I don't know beans about tweeting. I'd like to begin my remarks by talking about the continual need that we see for public higher education institutions around the country, including Missouri, to find creative, and notice that word up there, creative funding mechanisms to advance their core mission beyond what is possible through current financial resources. In a few moments, President Forsey will provide us with an overview of the state's fiscal picture and possible implications for the university during the next few years. While the state is most assuredly going to have to make difficult budget decisions, one thing is certain. The University of Missouri is committed to advancing its mission for the state, and thinking creatively is how that needs to be done. The best, most recent example of that is the Tiger Institute for Health Innovation, an initiative that will promote innovative healthcare solutions to drive down costs, increase quality of care for patients in the state of Missouri. Through an alliance with Cerner Corporation, the Tiger Institute is expected to have a $100 million impact to the university, and listen to this, will save Missourians $1 billion annually by creating one of the nation's most digitized health systems. It goes without saying that this level of innovation could not be achieved without Cerner's investment, but it also would not happen without the foresight and creativity, there's that word again, of our university leadership. Our leadership understands our state's precarious budget situation, so they are finding alternative ways to elevate the university and its healthcare mission beyond what it is today. So thank you, President Forsey, who has taken the lead on that Cerner initiative, and believe me, it would not have happened, it would not even occurred without his involvement. And also we want to thank Chancellor Deaton, Dr. Williamson, and Jim Ross for your leadership in making this Cerner initiative happen. As you can see from various headlines, media coverage of the announcement was generally positive. Missourians, for the most part, understand the importance of the Institute and the benefits to the state and beyond. This was and is a very complicated undertaking. And yet, unfortunately, there were some that missed the big picture and instead, by innuendo, implied there was some backroom deal-making going on. We believe that public-private partnerships, including alliances with public corporations, venture capitalists, foundations, and others, represent some of the finest creative thinking by our university leadership. And they deserve our appreciation rather than our skepticism. Thanks to the ingenuity of our university leadership, our healthcare system will be taken to new heights. We are disappointed that anyone or any media outlet would suggest otherwise. Another area that would be well served with creative thinking is our university's capital needs, which extend to all 4 campuses in our healthcare system. With state funding for the university's capital request unlikely in fiscal year 2011, now is the time for the state to think about alternative ways to help the university meet these burgeoning needs, with a bonding issue being one of the most obvious options. Without such a mechanism, the university's capital backlog will only continue to increase with potential negative consequences to our core mission. There are other avenues that will also need to be explored, but certainly the bonding issue is one that should be on the top of the list. Finally, I couldn't leave the topic of creativity without mentioning some of the most creative work of students I've seen on our campus. Just a few weeks ago, I had the opportunity to be on the Rolla campus where students at Missouri S&T unveiled a 2009 Saturn that is being used in a technology competition with, they got a picture up there that's not supposed to be there, with 17 other universities across the U.S. and Canada that involve re-engineering the car to further minimize fuel consumption and reduce emissions while retaining the car's performance and appeal. but our Missouri S&T team is pulling the gas engine completely out of that car, and they're going to power the vehicle with hydrogen fuel cells and lithium-ion batteries, and have already designed a virtual model using advanced software and computer modeling, and we wish them luck in that competition. Now, they've got a number of things going on that campus down there. Another creative project recently involved the inter-campus team of students from MU in collaboration with Missouri S&T that placed 11th out of 20 universities in designing and building solar homes. The solar homes, which took the students thousands of hours to design and build, feature solar roof panels, wood siding taken from a dilapidated Missouri barn, and closet doors crafted from compressed weeds. The homes were recently on display in the National Mall in Washington, D.C. for the competition. These are but a few of the many creative things that are going on our campuses, and we'll share others with you at future meetings. Finally, I would be remiss if I didn't mention a recent undertaking of President Forsey that highlighted our university as a creative, there's that word again, institution that is leveraging its IT capabilities. President Forsey recently was the keynote speaker at the annual Internet 2 membership meeting in San Antonio, attended by top IT leaders in academia nationwide. He spoke about how strategically vital IT is to higher education in enhancing collaboration, providing new revenue streams, and managing costs. For those of you that would like to see this speech, you can find it at the UM System web page. With that, I will close my remarks and turn the podium over to the President.
Well, let me add my good morning to everyone, and hopefully, as I always do, let me start by thanking our faculty, our staff, our students, our administrators, and all of our friends, university, and supporters that are gathered here this morning and on the web for all the great work that you do each and every day to support the mission and to keep our university as strong as it is. And I'd also like to do, as I always do, thank the curators for your continued engagement, for your diligence, for your passion about education in our state and certainly about the University of Missouri. I think we saw an indication this morning about the product of our work, if I could use that, as we saw two of our student athletes represent our university and do that in a way that should make us all proud of the work that we do each and every day. Let me begin my remarks, and it's probably hard not to start any presentation in this environment without talking a little bit about the environment that we're in and talking about where we are with economic impact going on in our state related to the recession. And as you might suspect, the news is not good. The news continues to come in from lots of different dimensions. You know, for fiscal year 2010, that we have generally preserved the status quo as a result of the arrangement we made with the governor coming into this year to hold our budget to the 2009 fiscal level in exchange for preserving tuition at that same level. But we also know that there are risks developing to the 2010 general budget situation in the state, and other impacts could in fact occur for those programs that are outside of what would have been considered core appropriations, specifically Caring for Missourians. One-time funds were used for that, and what we call other curator programs, which would pick up activities like our hospital, which has some amount of funding from those other programs, State Historical Society, MoreNet, and so forth. So again, remains to be seen how that will play out. Go back one. So what we do know at this point in time is that we are continuing to run significantly off what had been the state's forecast for this 2010 cycle. We know at this point in time and through September we're off about 11% to that budget. So the questions are going to come, what will this mean as the stimulus dollars start to work their way through in 2010 and 2011. We know that at this point in time, only about half of the stimulus dollars that are likely to be available in 2011 than there were in 2010, so about $25 million to the University of Missouri. At this point in time, if you kind of play forward, even though there's some calendarization that occurs, we tend to get out of the gate a little slow in the fiscal year, so the 10%, 11% perhaps is alarming, but we would expect some of that to come back just the way the calendarization works. But suffice to say that at this stage, our planning view should be that as we go into 2011 and then project forward in 2012, that we could have as much as a 10% challenge to our operating budget, as much as a 10% challenge to our operating budget. So if I could quote from a letter that I shared with the curators and all the general officers this week from Mark Udoff, who's the president of the California system, that said now is not the time to be dealing with faith-based budgeting. We have to deal with these budget issues directly and do that in a way that makes sense for all of our constituents and engage all the community as we do that. You know, last year as I came on board, it certainly, even with Gordon's fine leadership hand to help me as I got started, certainly the economic model, the model of the university, how finances work, was a very complicated equation. We spent some time trying to understand exactly how those parts work, and this chart I've shared with the curators before is a way of kind of decoding, if you will, the budget, the state support of that, tuition, as well as our own efficiency and how that plays out. This chart, I think, would give some conclusions of that. And again, from my experience, the level of change implied on that previous chart is really extraordinary. And I think the chancellors, the curators, all that have been involved to ensure that we keep our mission strong should feel good about the outcomes that have occurred during that period of time, which would say significant, dramatic enrollment increases, over 8,000 students having been added to our four-campus system during that time. We've been able to maintain our selective admission standards. Our quality has maintained during that period. Outcomes have been maintained. Our graduation rates, the federal research that comes in university, have also shown improvement. But that's required significant productivity. And again, back to the previous page, whether you pick Consumer Price Index or the Higher Education Funding Index, we would see, again, upwards of a 20% productivity improvement required in order to maintain, again, that quality of support. But we also know that that's been done in the context of a decline in state support offset by a shift of burdens of students in the form of tuition. But we also know that's been done in the context of a continued decline in state support, where now we're showing 45th in per capita funding for the operating budget, near last in per capita funding on capital funding, and we also know near the bottom in regards to the group that is a comparative group for universities in regards to faculty salaries. So, again, it kind of chalks the playing field, if you will, about where we've been. I posed the question last December and again in February that said, shouldn't the state's land-grant institution and, if you will, our state's flagship campus institutions be even more relevant in the toughest of times? Shouldn't we be viewed as part of the solution, and shouldn't we be an asset to the state as those solutions are sought? So without going through these individually, I think we've done a great deal in that regard. We've turned over every rock that we can to be sure that we are more relevant, that we've been very creative in that approach. So whether it's our P20 task force that's trying to reach back in to that early childhood development through high school, through community colleges to determine readiness, whether it's the focus that we have, and you've heard over time all of our campuses talk about the e-learning and distance education importance for the future, whether it's about the economic development, the opportunity to create jobs, allow our researchers to flourish in that environment, and certainly our accountability measures, which is a way of providing a stewardship report to all of our constituents about how we intend to be good stewards of the assets that are provided. All that, of course, at the underpinning at the bottom of our faculty, staff, and students that are the lifeblood of what we do. So a lot has been done, and I think poses the question during that challenging time, are there other things that should be taken on, other things that should be, again, accomplished by this university as we aspire to that leadership position? So I will have to admit at this time some of these notions are ideas. Some of them may be more my words than the collective wisdom of my colleagues, including our shared governance process with the faculty. But I will suggest to you that these are items that, in my view, are most relevant as we think about the next few years ahead. So if you'll allow me to step through those quickly. Cost management measures and cash conservation measures are in place, but we need to do more. If you believe what we heard last night, as we heard Jim Moody describe the state's budget process, and if you believe the numbers that we saw this morning, we will have to start down the track of taking a further 5% reduction to our 2010 run rate to be ready for what could be that outcome in 2011. We know that we spent a lot of time with the board and with Warren's leadership, the Human Resource and Compensation Committee, examining the strategic importance of dealing with this salary situation for faculty and staff. The question, will we have, again, the wherewithal to deal with that strategically and make progress as we look forward? In the middle column, I am calling for us to conduct regional capital project forums to engage our campuses, our communities, the state, investors, those that could bring money to the equation, to examine, without throwing the towel in on a statewide bonding issue, but examine what else we can do to be engaging the communities that are so important to our livelihood going forward, but also vice versa, to, again, see what else we can do to fund capital projects, to fund maintenance and repair that we know is lagging in our state and lagging as a result of this historic funding and lack of a consistent mechanism we've had to fund capital projects. So we will get this done right after the first of the year, if not before. Again, region-specific forums in St. Louis, in Kansas City, in Columbia, and Rolla to convene those that would have the most interest in ensuring that we have a mechanism in place to look at capital project needs. Sources of revenue, again, something that we can dwell a lot on the left part of that chart. And the left part of the chart, I will submit to you, is not very compelling when you've been in the cost-cutting mode that we've been in for a number of years. We've got to spend a disproportionate amount of time over time on the right part of that chart in terms of revenue sources. So we're going to have a renewed emphasis within our campuses on intellectual property and commercialization, but with a finer point on standing up companies and creating jobs, a finer point on standing companies, help companies being created out of our campus intellectual property and commercialization, and creating new net jobs for the state. As you know, earlier this year we talked about tuition. We talked about disaggregating our tuition approach going forward on each of our 4 campuses. So today, without describing exactly how that will be, you should know that I have challenged our campuses to come back by the end of the year with their ideas about that approach to a market-based tuition that would be reflective of St. Louis needs versus Kansas City needs versus S&T versus Mizzou. Again, a strategic way of looking at our needs in regards to tuition. And obviously, keeping in mind that our students, those that are with us today and those that will be considering our University of Missouri system, are going through the same economic challenges that we are. So we're going to have to keep in mind affordability and accessibility as part of our core mission. Finally, I'm calling on us to do like we did in the late 80s and 90s, where we made an investment in ensuring that our faculty would be world-class, and that investment required a state match. I'm calling for the same thing to be done now, that we establish with the state a matching program for investments in that critical aspect of preserving our research mission, investing in STEM approaches that deal with science, with technology, with engineering and math. We know we're not producing enough jobs in those categories, so I'm calling for a renewed emphasis on that and requiring us to, as a university system, to come up with dollars that, in fact, could be matched with state dollars as a way of dealing with that critical need. You know, like you, I read a lot of publications and certainly have been struck over the last year with the national discussion that has now become a constant aspect of what we read and hear about in regards to higher education, a national discussion. And I think what's important about that discussion is it's not talking as much about the here and now. There are certainly things that need to be dealt with, and I think as I have outlined, we are certainly in the University of Missouri system doing all we can about the here and now. But importantly, what is being posed is what will the next decade bring? What will we need to look like in 2020 to have been responsive by that point in time to the needs of our students, the changing needs of our faculty, the changing needs of the fundamentals of what we do in higher education? So today, as you think about the United States in higher education, we lead the world on any dimension that you could imagine. We lead the world. But you also know that the world is flat, and the world is catching up with us dramatically, witnessed by articles like you see represented by 2 national publications within just the last week. Suffice to say, higher education has a number of very challenging and, if you will, vexing issues. And this list is represented a consensus list of national higher education issues that we are all dealing with. This comes from a governing board source. It comes from our associations that deal with public and private higher education. So this list would look very familiar to this group. Accountability for student learning and outcomes, a real focus on what happens as a student progresses through our institutions. Access and student success, the ability for students to be able to aspire to a community college or to a 4-year institution. The price of tuition, and along with that, if I could add the value proposition, our students being able to see now the value. Witness the Business Week headline about the lost generation. Can students get jobs after they made the investment along with their parents? Budget and funding, certainly our state is not unique in that regard. Student aid policies, the ability to fund and provide financial aid support. Aligning this P20 education system, that's early childhood through high school, through community college, to be sure that the pathway is clear for students that are starting down that track. Tax policies, benefit policies, all part of that complicating and vexing issue. E-learning, the trends, and we saw yesterday a brief video clip of how students are expecting over time to have access and to have flexible approaches to teaching and learning. Diversity and significant shifts going on nationally in demographics, and finally, competition for our education dollars from for-profit institutions. There are some Missouri-specific issues, again, perhaps subsets of any other institution around the country, but certainly some to point out to this group this morning. We did a survey last year about Missourians' attitudes about higher education, and we found in that survey that it's not clear to all Missourians, less than 50%, about the value that's delivered by higher education, what aspiration can be there as a result of that. And we know that Missourians may not think about higher education as the top next investment that would be made. Certainly health care fits in that category as well as job creation. So while higher education is viewed as important, perhaps not as top of mind as we would like, and therefore a communication challenge in front of us. We talked a little yesterday about, in Steve Graham's presentation, about the community colleges and the need for us to be even more engaged with community colleges to be sure that we take advantage with them of the tremendous funding that will be occurring from the federal perspective, and gives us a unique opportunity, perhaps earlier on in our 2 urban campuses at UMKC and UMSL, but certainly over time at Mizzou and at S&T, to be sure that student access has a greater opportunity for success because of the great partnering opportunities that we have with them. State economy lagging behind national recovery. This is not a criticism, but it's certainly a way of differentiating Wall Street recovery, which thankfully has occurred, versus Main Street recovery, which is not occurring. Wall Street is recovering by the creativity of corporations and conserving cash and inventories and margins, and that recovery has not occurred to Main Street yet, which won't occur until we see real revenue growth occurring both corporately and at the consumer level. So we are lagging behind. I think Missouri, as we heard last night, will tend to lag going in, and unfortunately will tend to lag coming out. And finally, capital and funding mechanisms we know are a particular challenge as we think about particularly maintenance and repair, where we've been underfunding and have some very critical issues. And as I already positioned, we know today that we're not producing enough STEM-related or healthcare professionals in our state. Therefore, we are an importer of those professions in areas that will likely nationally represent the key areas of growth as we think about the future. So the challenge, if you think about that, is how do we manage, and some of this is a leadership challenge both nationally in the state and within higher education. This really unprecedented level of change, and the way we do that will determine our continued success. This will require, in my belief, partnering with the key stakeholders in the context, and again, with a finer point on our unique role and mission, particularly around research. That is unique in the state and something that has to be continued to be reinforced or it could be undernourished and, in fact, marginalized if we're not careful. Quality and outcomes focus. I don't think there's any question that we have a mindset now to be accountable, to be out there in terms of what we want the student expectation to be, as well as our faculty expectation, as well as our constituents. Access and affordability is something that is part of our land-grant mission. It's part of our charter and something we have to keep mindful of as we deal with these challenges. And finally, our ability to deal with these issues that are statewide as well as nationally, and our ability to deal with them in a very constructive way. Chancellor Deaton, in a public forum earlier this week, I think used the term, now is not the time to be sitting in the garrison. It's now the time to be out ensuring that we lead with the planning that's required to deal with that. So I would pose to you the question about, how does change occur? And change can certainly be dictated from federal legislation, from state legislation, from state or federal leaders. Sometimes it could be regulated to us by federal or state. Sometimes it can be top-down. You tend to, over time, find that you've got a few of those chips to use, and certainly change can be directed. But also change comes from within. At least my experience, and I think the surveys would show that sustainable change only occurs from within. Sustainable change only occurs from within when you unleash the innovation, you unleash the creativity, the term used earlier this morning. You allow those that are closest to the action to, again, assume an ownership position with a clear vision and a clear case of mission that's to be accomplished. And in our case, those closest to the action are our faculty, our staff, and our students. And the engagement required to do that is going to be very important. So as we think about that, we have to be engaged at every level. We have to exercise shared governance and do that in a sincere manner. We have to be sure that our existing plans are preserved, but at the same time, key initiatives have to be invested and highlighted. We must respond, we must anticipate, and we must be innovative in those solutions. So as we think about the University of 2020, it's going to require us to really be willing to examine those paradigms. Be willing to look at what we've done historically and perhaps a different lens with a different twist to be sure that we can support that mission. And I think it calls for a fundamental reexamination at the heart of what we do, which is the intersection of students and faculty in the learning process. That is the heart of what we do. And I think, frankly, it is the heart of what's going on as a national discussion. When I read article after article, and I read letter after letter, and whether it's in the Chronicle or in the national publications, the heart of the discussion is fundamentally what we deliver and how the engagement in that teacher-student learning process is evolving. So what I'm suggesting is that in the next year, that we engage in the process of examination. And we do that in a way that, again, is very thoughtful and with the best in mind that we have around shared governance, so that we can really evaluate and examine key elements of this historic paradigm shift that's clearly occurring. And we have to acknowledge and kind of get over the hump that is clearly occurring in regards to that fundamental relationship. So this is not an exhaustive list, but it's tended to highlight those things we need to look at, whether it's bachelor degree completion programs. We have a lot of stranded students out there now that are mid-career that didn't quite make it. How do we help them re-engage in this process of learning? Requirements for e-learning. And again, if you saw the vignette yesterday, students are now suggesting to us that they don't just plug in 24 hours a day. They plug in 28 hours a day. Well, how do they do that? They multitask. They tweet. Now, I haven't quite got there yet either, but we will get there. Requirements for hybrid learning, and certainly as we think about the stress in our classrooms today because of growth, how do we blend that learning process between classroom, e-learning, and distance? Clear pathways. Clear pathways. A young man this morning talked about coming to the University of Missouri with 23 credits. But I've also heard, as I travel around the state, that it's a challenge sometimes to ensure how those honor classes and advanced program classes transfer. We've got to be sure that those pathways become clear, both high school to college as well as community college to university. A lot of discussion about 3-year programs and no-frill degrees. We need to examine that and examine that in the context, again, of access and affordability. We need to talk about year-round cycles. Evenings and weekends and the summer shouldn't be viewed as different. it ought to be viewed as our approach to be flexible to student needs and student demands. And finally, clarity around credit hour requirements across our programs of bachelor and advanced degrees. So not an exhaustive list, but I think a list that would give us a starting point to be sure that as we deal with the context of the national discussion, that if we deal with the challenges that clearly we're going to have in the next couple of years to the state, and as we ask the state to do some things, and as we require us to be advocates, we know those are going to be difficult discussions to have. But I think if we do that in the context of we want to lead, we want to be part of the solution, that we are willing to take on some of these vexing issues and willing ourselves to change from within, to examine these paradigms, then I think we will be providing that with the leadership and a tone and with the opportunity to be sure that the morale, again, at the heart of what we do, our teachers, our faculty, our staff, and students can remain strong through that process. So that's a lot to cover in a short period of time, but just to summarize, 2011, 2012 are going to be challenges. They're going to require leadership at all levels within our institution to work our way through that. Actions to date, I would submit, have been supportive, but we know we can do more and have more to do, and therefore I'm calling for regional capital forums to try to look at ways of funding capital projects and maintenance repair versus the way we've always expected it to be occurring. I'm calling for an investment, a match by the state in these critical new jobs that can be created by research and STEM programs. I'm calling for revenue sources to be examined, an extra emphasis on standing up companies and new jobs to be created based on the platforms that we have in place on our campuses. And I'm calling for continued cost and cash diligence and a comprehensive review of this national discussion. So let me stop there to be sure that we have time to hear from our chancellors this morning. What we're doing in the context of what I laid out, I am so proud each and every day to have a chance, as Gordon said, to represent the university to the state, and certainly you're going to hear from the chancellors and our healthcare system this morning as we do that. So let me ask Leo Morton, followed by Tom, followed by Kent Ray representing Jack Carney, followed by the chancellor, and the chancellor will introduce Hal Williamson. Thank you.
Good morning. As President Forsey said, I'm Leo Morton, and it's an honor for me to serve as Chancellor of the University of Missouri, Kansas City. I'm also proud to tell you that in spite of all the challenges, we've had an extraordinary run of good news, and I'll get to some of that in a few minutes, but I'll start by talking about an important issue for us, and that's enrollment. As you can see, our enrollment is up about 4.3%, but importantly, we've hit some important targets within that enrollment growth, such as credit hours and continuing students, but we've had a large hit from transfer students, and that's probably driven by the economy as a number of students have decided to stay home other than go out of state. But importantly for us, being an urban-serving university, is that we've had an increase in our underrepresented students. The good news, in addition to that, is that the quality of our students remains high. We've always been in the top quartile in terms of selectivity, but as you can see here, our ACT scores and average GPA for our freshmen, those numbers are also going up. And we believe that the quality of instruction will also remain high because we've enjoyed a 12-to-1 student-to-faculty ratio. And but we do, as we go forward, have a need for more classrooms and larger classrooms to support the growth. The concern, of course, is the one that President Forsey just mentioned, and that is our students, and it's no surprise, are becoming more needy. And you can see those results there. And this challenge for access and affordability will be important to us as we continue to pursue our growth initiatives. I thought I would next talk about our progress on our strategic plan. I believe I reported to you before that the provost has done a great job in leading our planning for the strategy for the university starting last October. And it's important for us that we get a broad range of constituent involvement in the development of that strategy, and we've managed to do that thus far. The initial report was submitted last March, and since then we've had about 12 events where we've had over 300 people from the community in particular participate in providing feedback on the current draft of the strategy. You can see that the strategy does cover the primary elements of our mission, but you will also note that we have developed key objectives for each of the 6 goals, and we expect the implementation plan to be complete by the end of this year. Now that's important because next, I want to say thank you for your support in establishing the UMKC Foundation. That was one of the top items that came out of the Time to Get It Right report that has been sort of a roadmap for higher education in the Kansas City area. And we were able to announce that that was put in place last August. But since then, a lot of activity has gone on that's very important to the progress of that foundation. We've hired a nationally known figure, Murray Blackwelder, who came to us from Purdue University. There he was able to raise $1.7 billion. I've asked him to keep that trend up in the Kansas City area. We really need that. But a lot of work has been done in getting that foundation in place. You'll see that the action plans for the goals, that's the strategic plan goals, will be completed by the end of the year. But a feasibility study related to our initiatives with the foundation is also underway. We expect that to be completed and leadership gifts identified by September of next year, and so that we are in a position to finalize and announce a campaign by October. To date, we have not lost momentum. To date, we've raised about $6.1 million, and that's, even though that's less than last year included an extraordinary gift of about $8.2 million to the School of Dentistry that had our production last year at about $11.4 million. We've also announced some extraordinary gifts, $1.7 million from Andres Kernick for renewable energy, and we will be announcing another $1 million gift this week, that is next week on Tuesday, from the estate of from Lucille Armacost, and that will support. She's a 1938 graduate of the School of Arts and Sciences in English, and this gift will support 9 $5,000 scholarships in the School of Arts and Sciences. So that'll be a great announcement. I also wanted to talk about another important form of revenue for us, and that's the stimulus money. Since the stimulus was announced in February, we've proposed about $48 million worth of projects. And to date, we've been awarded about $14.6 million for about a 30% success rate. Now, that's ahead of what we've experienced in the past. The largest award there is from the U.S. Department of Education for our Institute for Urban Education. That program, by the way, has been identified as a national model, but this award further reinforces the fact that we are on the right path. So more to come there. You should understand, though, that $8.4 million is an award over a 5-year period of time. Finally, I mentioned that we've had a number of noteworthy occurrences over the last several weeks. It includes the announcement that our block school, the Institute for Entrepreneurship and Innovation, was identified as one of the top 25 in the country by Princeton Review. Now, Curator Bradley was there, and Curator Erdman also attended that announcement. That's a very important announcement for the block school. Also, we also had an announcement that we are tied with the University of Missouri at St. Louis for one of the top 25 universities that are best neighbors. That just means we're in good company when we're tied with UMSL. So following that, we also, as many of you know, we've had our peer review from the Higher Learning Commission, and we got a thumbs up for our reaccreditation. Construction projects, we have a number of them underway. Curator Erdman has been very busy coming to the campus for a number of the dedications that we've had. We've had a dedication for the Herman and Dorothy Johnson Residence Hall, for the Durwood Stanley Soccer and Recreational Field, and a topping off ceremony for our new student union. Next, we'll be talking more about the Miller Nichols Library as that expansion continues. Finally, I will tell you that we've been fortunate that we've had one of our faculty members published in Science Magazine. I can tell you that Dr. Tom George over there can tell you how important that is. And I will not attempt to explain what Dr. Payne's discovery is all about. I did read the article last night, and all I can tell you is I got a pretty good night's sleep. I will tell you, though, I don't recommend you try to read it, but I will tell you, though, that the discovery is important in the identification of more efficient materials to be used in solar cells. So that's important to our energy future. So with that, I will end, and thank you very much.
Well, thank you for this opportunity to talk about the University of Missouri St. Louis. My remarks are all going to be great news as well. And I know we've had some discussions last night and earlier this morning about budget difficulties, and yes, we have them at the University of Missouri St. Louis, but we are alive and doing extremely well. To follow up on the Science magazine article, over the last 25 years, this has become probably, along with Nature, the most prestigious journal to publish in. So having a faculty member published in Science is really a real kudo. Let me start with our strategic planning. We've got a plan called Gateway for Greatness. We originally were calling it Gateway to Greatness, but we realized we're already great. So this is the Gateway for Greatness. We finished this plan up this year. We had an outside consultant help us. We have 5 goals. I guess I saw that Casey's got 6 goals. And within each of these goals, we have what we call strategic priorities and initiatives. And within each of these, we've got a set of measures. When we came up with this plan, about 6 months ago, when it's going through all the shared governance, not only on campus, but outside campus. We've had community groups and supporters throughout the community in St. Louis help us with this. We had about, I'd say, 50 measures. And our main mantra was, if you can't measure it, it shouldn't be there. So we have measurables for everything. Well, the system came up, our president, with another 82 measures. So we looked at the 82 measures, we looked at our 50, and we kind of put them together. And wherever a measure from the system was like ours, we kicked ours out and put in the system measure. So we've got maybe about 100 measures now as part of this Gateway for Greatness strategic plan. And I'm going to now talk to you about some successes we've had that touch base on each one of these goals. Let me follow up on what Leo said. We did have our reaccreditation visit also earlier this year, and we got a clean bill of health, and we just officially now recently got the actual letter. It's from the Higher Learning Commission. They're headquartered in Chicago, and we're among 5% of all colleges and universities that get a reaccreditation without any follow-up visit. 95% have some sort of follow-up visit or follow-up report, so we're good for 10 years. We continue to strive for national rankings, particularly programmatic rankings, and U.S. News and World Report, since we last met as this group, has again ranked our international business program in the top 20. It's ranked anywhere from as high as 8 to 16. Our criminology or criminal justice program, again ranked in the top 4. And we have other venues, I'm not going to cite them now, though, that take our programs, and by particularly our programs at the university, and rank them. I think for us it's particularly noteworthy that we're only 46 years old. And when you think about that, a university that's only 46 years old now has 75,000 alums and has programs that are ranked internationally, and we're doing everything in terms of access to the community. It's kind of like we're doing it all there in St. Louis. Like our colleague sister campuses, we have broken enrollment records, and in fact we hit 16,548, but who's counting the students? And that's our highest ever in the 46-year history of the university. I do want to point out some features about that. 32% of our students are listed as minorities. 21% are African Americans. We have more African American students at our campus than anywhere else in the state. And 24% of our students now are enrolled in graduate programs. And again, it's amazing when you think of such a young institution to have a quarter of your students as graduate students. We've been applying for stimulus funding, just like everyone else. We've gotten almost $2.5 million so far in stimulus monies. We've got still a bunch of proposals pending, about $37 million pending, and we're hopeful for a good amount of that. As far as many faculty are concerned, it doesn't matter whether it's stimulus money or whether it's just grant money. They apply for it. And I just want to mention a proposal that we're kind of in the works now. This is not strictly speaking classified as ARRA stimulus money, but we're now a finalist for an NSF Center for a Plant Lipid Systems Center. This would be a $25 million proposal if funded. There were 120 applicants. They narrowed it down to 12. They made site visits. We're the lead institution. We have partners like Mizzou, Washington University, and we're very optimistic about this. It was a great site visit this past week, and the NSF review team spent 3 days on the campus, so keep our fingers crossed. And then my colleague from Kansas City and I have been sort of playing off of each other in this, and I'll give the same report that he gave with actually a listing of the universities that you can see that are in this Saviors of the City that I just learned. In fact, I think I learned about it from Leo that we end up being in the top 25. But we're tied here with Kansas City and with Houston as well. And number one is the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. Our fundraising is just doing spectacularly. Over the last 6 years, we've more than tripled our annual level of private fundraising. That's from private donors and also from corporations. We've never had a capital campaign in the history of the university. We've done targeted campaigns like for the Performing Arts Center, but never a university-wide campaign. So we launched one in 2005, the quiet phase, made a public announcement in September. The president was there with me to help launch that public phase. And we tagged it at $100 million. We've already raised $83 million. We're going to 2012, so I mean, clearly we're going to we'll exceed that this year. But we have gone up to now $27 million last year in our fundraising, and right now, to date, we're at least at that rate or even higher for this current fiscal year. Let me mention one gift in particular. Well, it's actually 3 gifts from the Express Scripts Foundation. They have different pots of money where they give, but there's an actual foundation, and we've received up to $1 million from the Express Scripts Foundation. From the corporation directly, $2.5 million very recently, and then George and Melissa Paz, another $500,000. So we've received upwards of $4 million toward this campaign from Express Scripts. And this is particularly noteworthy because Express Scripts is a very young company. They're younger than we are as a university. They don't have a history yet of giving. And so we're sort of opening up that history for them of giving. In terms of our capital campaign, we've got 100% participation from the Chancellor's Council. I think these are what are called trustees at Kansas City and Rolla. And all of our senior administrators are contributing to the campaign. It's important that those that are preaching, that are actually, preaching or soliciting are also contributing themselves.
And I think it should be noted that the Chancellor and his wife, Barbara Halbach, were on that list of donors to over $1 million gifts to the university.
Well, and I'll add that President Sherry Forsey were on that list as well. Thank you very much, Gary. And that's all I have to say.
Good morning. I'm Camp Ray. Chancellor Carney apologizes for his inability to be here this morning. Most of you know that his wife Pat is ill, being treated in Boston, and Jack is in Boston with her. We were asked to address the topics of enrollment, research, and campus strategic planning, among some other things. I do want to mention about accreditation, which I don't have a slide for. Last fall, our 16 engineering programs were visited by the ABET accreditors. In February, the Higher Learning Commission visited us, and last week ABET was back to look at our computer science program. We're just about sick of self-studies and ABET teams, and the 2 greatest lies that have ever been told are when the accreditation team shows up on campus and says, "We're here to help you," and the provost says, "We're glad you're here." Next slide, please. The year 2000 is our baseline year, and I'll show you why in just a little bit. But if you look at the numbers there at the bottom of that 2000 year column, and then you take a look at the 2008 and 2009 bottom line, you can see that we've made some tremendous increases in enrollment on campus. We had a 6% increase in undergraduate enrollment from last year, a 10.3% increase in enrollment in graduates, in graduate students from last year, to give an overall 7% increase in our enrollment. I'm challenged. I have no schedulable classrooms available from 9 to 12 Monday through Friday, and the only classrooms I have available at 8 o'clock are seminar-sized classrooms. Next slide, please. Our incoming class, since we changed the name of the institution, our undergraduate freshman out-of-state applications have increased by 27%, and our out-of-state enrollment has increased by 9%. We think that's important with the upcoming change in the Missouri demographics, particularly from a revenue standpoint. Our fall freshman class totaled 1,134 students, 60% larger than our class of 2000. This included 24% female students. It's a very talented class. We had 4 with perfect ACTs and 1 with a perfect SAT. The average ACT composite was 27.7, which puts this class in the top 8% of the country. 35% of these students had a composite of 30 or better. Next slide. This shows our freshman class numbers for the last 20-some years. And if you take a look at our baseline year, 2000, you can see we got a 63% increase in freshman numbers from 2000 to this fall. Next slide. Our diversity has certainly increased, both in female and minority and underrepresented students. Next slide. The 41% increase in undergraduates, 41% increase in female students, 73% increase in graduate students, 91% increase in minority students, and a 40% increase in non-engineering majors. Since 2005, we've had a 60% growth due to increased retention rates. We're now retaining 88% of our first to second year students. We're now, this fall, retaining 80% of our second to third year students. We have a 62% graduation rate. We're shooting for 65% by 2010. The increase in enrollment has generated $21 million in increased gross revenues for the campus, which has kept us really out of trouble with the declining state revenues that we've seen over this decade. Next slide. Talk a little bit about research. Next slide. The amount of awards from proposals submitted this past year is up 11% over the previous year. The proposals submitted in total dollars is up 13.5%. The number of proposals submitted last year is up 3% over the previous year. Our research expenditures were only up slightly, but our indirect cost recovery, our F&A recovery, was up 16%, and the number of active awards is an all-time high, and that was up 5% over the previous year. Next slide. We have these line items in federal legislation, and we're hopeful that they will survive the committee actions that generate the final bill. That's a total of $17 million. Next slide. In our capital campaign, we have a $200 million goal to be completed by June of 2010. We're at $191 million. We are optimistic enough of reaching the $200 million that we're planning our celebration for April, and we're really pleased to have this. Next slide. Strategic planning on our campus is a little bit different than what we've experienced in the past. We do have a 5-year strategic plan, and we use a 1-year tactical or operational plan. There's a campus steering committee that's comprised of all the communities on campus. Previous strategic plans were primarily top-down plans. This is a plan that bubbled up. We have good buy-in. In fact, the HLC Curators made a comment on it as they went around campus. People they quizzed about strategic plan knew we had a strategic plan and knew something about it, which was pleasing to me since I'm the guy that's supposed to be running the strategic plan. It's nice to know that the troops recognize it. We did present the plan initially in 2 open forums, received comments, changed the draft to reflect those comments, and that's probably one of the reasons that I think we have the wide buy-in for this. Next slide. We have 4 strategic objectives and 15 strategic goals. We have numerous progress indicators. I subscribe to the concept of public embarrassment. Each one of these progress indicators and action items in the TAC plan has an individual associated with having the responsibility for seeing that action or progress indicator is implemented and achieved. We revise the plan every year, so it's always 5 years looking forward. The current plan was revised and adopted this month, and we posted on the Chancellor's website, linked to the progress website, so it's easy to find. Next slide. Our tactical plan for this year was also finalized this month. We have 59 action items, and these items pretty much map on top of the President's accountability measures. We report the results in an open forum in January and in May, and then a final written report that's posted on the Chancellor's and the Provost's websites. You can go there and see how we did this last year. This past year we had 53 action items. 26 of them were fully completed. 11 were in some stage of progress. By that we mean that these were multi-year projects that were initiated or implemented this year and would be completed in the next year. And then we had 16 that weren't completed or fell short, and almost all of these were the result of hiring freezes or the reduction in expenditures that we've been observing this year. Next slide. For those of you who've been coming to our campus for the Curators meeting for the last 3 years, you would have noticed construction to the left of the Havener Center where the meetings are held. This would be to the east. When I arrived, it was a construction site. Now all the chain link fence is gone. The piles of construction material are gone. The heavy equipment is gone. The construction trailers are gone. And this is the view you would see from Havener looking to the east. Next slide. The view from the library looking to the southwest towards Havener. Next slide. And this is looking to the west. This is the statue of St. Patrick, patron saint of engineers. It's rubbed a lot, particularly during exam weeks. But it looks considerably better than what it did. Next slide, please. On the back of the Student Recreation Center was a former Army ROTC firing range that was no longer being used. We've converted this to a fitness center. It'll be dedicated tomorrow. We raised the roof on this by another 9 feet and put a double deck in there. And the next slide, please. This shows the inside. This was taken a couple of weeks ago as the floor covering was putting down. Student Curator Confer was in there last week and gave me a 2 thumbs up on the equipment. And you still like that equipment, don't you?
Yeah, it's all brand new.
Good. And then last slide, please. This is the solar house photograph that you saw earlier. The rules are you submit a proposal to participate. U.S. Department of Energy reviews the proposals and chooses the 20 best proposals. Missouri S&T, along with the University of Puerto Rico, has been the only institutions that have participated in each and every one of these contests. We finished 11th this year, not that many points out of 6th or 7th place. So our students did quite well with that. With that concludes my remarks. If I can take any questions. Thank you.
Welcome to Mizzou on a homecoming weekend, and it's not just that shortening of the Longhorn horns that I like that phrase that we're excited about, but it's also the good news of the University of Missouri, and you've been hearing some of that this morning, and it certainly continues here at Mizzou with the record growth in enrollment. Last year, I think I reported to you 13 enrollment records. We added another 9 records this fall in areas that were very critical to us. But we grew not only above the 31,000 mark, but also improved in the quality of our students. Our ACT scores rank actually 4th in the Big 12, below the 3 schools in Texas, it's interesting to note, and about 20th among the 34 AAU public universities. But we're committed to improving that through improved retention and graduation rates that have been on a steady rate of growth over the last decade. If you look at the enrollment management processes that we're engaged in, we are trying to hit our targets across the demographic spectrum that we see. We have students from every county in Missouri, every state in the nation, and over 100 countries around the world. And as you can see, there's still international enrollment growth of over 3% in this post-9/11 era. And that's an important factor in the diversity, particularly of our graduate programs. Certainly in terms of minority targets as well, we're very pleased to see the growth in African American students of 13%, something we've worked at long and hard on this campus. And with the freshman or first-time college growth of 14%, those figures look optimistic for the future as well. I emphasize the graduation and retention rates, and I think each of the chancellors has done that today, because those are vital. The cheapest way to recruit is to keep the students you've got. And this is something we can still improve on and are dedicated to it. And it's helped a great deal by such processes on the campus as effective advising in freshman interest groups and learning communities. And we were very pleased to see the attention even the New York Times gave to an AP story featuring Missouri for its success at the undergraduate level. And you've seen some of the other things we've done, even with our student athletes this morning, talking about their involvement in research and in community service, are issues that do so much to improve the learning environment here on the campus. A brief note on federal stimulus, because this is important as we look to alternative revenue sources. We are achieving a great deal of success here, really, with about a 32% success rate right now. 64 of 198 projects have been funded under federal stimulus. In fact, last night, and not counted, is an additional $5 million in NIH funds that Rob Duncan had just received a written report about. The national average, let me say, for success is something in the 10 to 15% rate. So as some of the new curators have been hearing, we've been setting the mark standard nationally on rate of growth of federal research. This kind of success rate of being about double the national average indicates that we're going to stay on that very rapid path of research success. And that's a tribute to the faculty and the staff on this campus. And I commend the faculty for being there. And as I keep saying, we're growing because the faculty at Harvard, Stanford, and Yale, and all the other universities of this country are saying, do that research at Mizzou, because that's where the top faculty are. And it's great to see that reflected across our system as well as we collaborate in so many ways with other campuses. One of the projects, for example, that federal stimulus is addressing is directly related to what President Forsey emphasized earlier, and that is more emphasis on STEM projects. And this is an example of a $5 million project that we've received to partner with the Missouri school districts to improve physics education by providing opportunities over about a 5-year period for a teacher development program that will involve 80 ninth grade teachers through summer activities and involvement with our faculty in one of our absolutely premier teaching programs with faculty like Neera Chandrasekhar, who's won the Governor's Award in Excellence in Teaching, and others, an opportunity to spread that talent across the state and improve education throughout that P20 emphasis area that President Forsey has called attention to. It's so important for us as a state. We've been, in terms of strategic planning, let me simply say, in spite of these difficult times we've had, this is the time to step forward and to invest in the future, because we've got to be looking 50 years down the road as we build the future research base, the future democratic base of our society by education. We've got to be doing those things that can ensure that we are leaders in higher education. Provost Brian Foster has, over the last 3 years, been deeply engaged in a process with our faculty and staff to address the question of what can we do better than any other university in the nation. Because of the unique constellation of academic programs on this campus and the tremendous culture of multidisciplinary collaboration that is evident to anyone who's been in our Life Science Center, who's talked to people at our reactor. You'll hear more about it later today from Dr. Williamson in the College of Medicine. We know that there are a number of things we can do that other universities are simply not situated to do. We want to focus on those and call attention to them to improve the quality of education here at Mizzou. So we have, over the last few months, been talking and publicly to our faculty and staff and to groups about the 5 specific advantages that we see as hallmarks of what we are doing at this university. I won't elaborate on them in detail, but I would emphasize them. Food for the future, new media, One Health, One Medicine, or comparative medicine, the convergence of animal and human health, sustainable energy, thanks to the seminar that Missouri S&T collaborated with the system this past spring here, called attention to that, and you saw some of the research, those new curators, and visiting Gary Stacy yesterday in our Center for Sustainable Energy. And then most importantly, here at the bottom, managing through the disruptive technologies and social change that occurs as a result of the technological change due to the ongoing movement of science in our society. These are 5 areas that can marshal the talents of our university, and we can focus new investments and make, even in these tough times, some reallocation toward these areas in ways that will be very important to the future of the university. So we're intending to invest about another $4 to $6 million a year in these particular areas. Now, these represent areas of our university that, taken together, probably represent about $200 million across the multiple disciplines of our university right now. But we're trying to move outside the narrow confines of disciplines or even colleges, and to ensure that issues that confront society are addressed by the multidisciplinary talents that we have from the many areas of our university. And we will provide the kind of facilitation approaches and the new investments at the margin that can move this forward and can serve us even in a more effective way as we look to the future. And this is very consistent with some of the best thinking that's occurring in the nation today, and we've vetted that with national agencies as well, and they're very excited about the direction that we're taking. We're doing things that you'll hear more about later, because they're important priorities for us nationally here in the state and the university to protect our students and our faculty and the community at large. Our flu task force, which is combining the efforts of all dimensions of our university. Dr. Williamson will give you an update on what's actually happened as a result of this. The point I wanted to make here simply is that the spirit of collaboration that you see with our student athletes and their success on the field and in the classroom, you see it in those 5 areas of emphasis that we're looking to coalesce our talents in this university. We have the same thing occurring across the many administrative components of the university as well. And the spirit of collaboration enables us to have a flu task force, for example, that we've been working on over the last year to be prepared for what's happening right now. And so far, the results look pretty good. Our incidents here are well below that of some other areas of the nation. We know we can't control all that, but everyone is committed to doing the best job possible and working together to achieve that. That collaboration is also evident in just 2 quick announcements I wanted to make of upcoming dedications. We have a brain imaging center opening that will feature our Department of Psychological Sciences in the College of Arts and Science, but provides a tremendous tool of imaging that's funded by federal agencies in collaboration with programs of research here
not only in psychological sciences, but are critical to our new Department of Psychiatry and Dr. John Loriella and that group, as well as the departments of nutrition here on the campus, School of Medicine, veterinary medicine, agriculture, engineering, and on and on. This is a very important research tool that will be featured in the opening on October the 29th. New Curators had an opportunity yesterday to look at Laffery Hall and our engineering complex. Again, just focusing on the emphasis that President Forsey has given to STEM areas. It's vital that we improve our infrastructure in this regard, and thanks to significant private giving with Tom and Nell Laffery, we'll be dedicating Laffery Hall on November the 5th in our College of Engineering. And again, a college of about 11 departments, over 2,000 students, and with a lot of collaboration across the many dimensions of this university and the research that's underway in our College of Engineering. So this is a big project. It's the first phase of a total renovation of the old buildings in our College of Engineering, and I think most of our curators have seen those buildings, and we're hard at work in improving them, and private sector is important. Our development campaign continues in spite of completing that. I say in spite of completing the billion-dollar campaign. We're running well ahead of our target of $100 million this year. In the first quarter, we've achieved almost 40% of our target. So the private support from alumni and friends of this university continues to be a hallmark of providing the resources in collaboration and matching with the state and federal government and parents across the state and nation to achieve the goals of our university. I'm going to move ahead now and introduce the next part of the program, which is a report on our health system from our Vice Chancellor of Health Sciences and our health system, Dr. Hal Williamson. And as he's coming forward, I would just emphasize that Dr. Williamson represents the leadership under the reorganized health science system that President Forsey undertook when he became president. Dr. Williamson has brought distinguished leadership to his role from a distinguished academic background as leader of the Family and Community Medicine program that for many years has been ranked as the third best, roughly the third best in the nation in U.S. News and World Report and in other recognition. Hal, we're very happy to have you with us and pleased at your leadership.
Thanks, Brady. And I would say we were always ranked second or third, Brady, but who's counting? I very much appreciate the time that I have to spend with you. I know it's unusual to have this much time on your schedule. I want you to know that I took that honor very seriously. I want you to know also that a number of my colleagues thought that I should present more than I'm presenting and others less than I'm presenting, so I think we're probably pretty close to the sweet spot. I also want to give you a little preview of what we're going to talk about today. I do want to give you a preview of what we're going to talk about today. Can you back me up one? And that's good. Also, for you to know, Curators, your President Forsey runs a very efficient meeting. The slide regulator only goes forward; it doesn't go backwards, which I think is a stroke of genius, and we should all use that more often. So here's the table of contents, if you will. I'm going to talk with you a little bit about the PITS Management Associates and the scorecards that came out of it. A number of curators have asked me where we are with that, and I'll update you. Probably about half of my time will be spent on that for reasons that you'll see. I want to tell you a little bit about the strategic issues that our consolidated health system have been working on over the last year. Give you a very few high-level, what I call health system highlights. I did not put in, have not put in all the honors and awards that have been earned over the last year, but I want to just hit a few highlights. I've been asked to give you an update on H1N1. Seems to be something everybody's interested in. Several people asked me, well, what's the impact of the imagined healthcare reform and the University of Missouri? So I'll talk to you a little bit about that. And also Kevin Nikas will come up, the CFO of the health system, to talk to you a little bit about the financial report. That's the kind of thing that you have seen quoted. So that's what's up for today. So the PITS Management Associates, you may recall, came in March of 2008 and worked with us until December of 2008. I want to really talk to you about three different things that the PMA group did with us. First is a reorganization, and I'll talk to you about the new structure that we have and what its impact has been. A new framework for what that they call scorecards. These are our ability to track the kinds of things that we think are important in our health system, and a little bit at some new looks at vision and mission. And those are the things that the PMA group helped us put together. This is the new organizational chart. The Board of Curators up here. The Vice Chancellor is down here. I want to highlight a few things. One is that I report to Chancellor Deaton. I also work closely with MU Provost Brian Foster. With the reorganization, we really recognized that the Provost office at MU were pros, that there was really no reason to replicate all the fine work that they do with respect to promotion and tenure, faculty development, and so forth. So you note that the Provost and I have joint reports from the School of Medicine, down at the bottom, the School of Nursing, and the School of Health Professions. Those three schools are now lined up much more closely than they were in the past, and we're beginning to see the fruits of that reorganization. The deans of those schools and I and Jim Ross at the MUHC meet regularly. We have strategic planning that we do jointly, and that's quite a lot different than what we've done in the past. The MUHC, the hospital and clinics, reports to me, the Vice Chancellor, but also we have a new advisory board that we've been working with for the last year. And I think over time, as that group understands more and more about what we're trying to accomplish, they'll be very helpful for us going forward. So I want to highlight that right now, the alignment of these three health profession schools and what they bring in education, research, and clinical care, the alignment with that with the hospital and clinics, I think, has been a real plus. There's hardly a week that goes by that Jim Ross doesn't come to me and say, it's really nice to be working with the doctors like we should be. And that's been very gratifying. Jim, you have taken reports from for years. Jim has been a great leader and a great help to me in this reorganization. Let's talk a little bit about the size and scope of those three boxes, those four boxes that I just showed you. I'll focus on the bottom line here, the totals. So we have about 3,100 students and residents. Those are the designated learners in the health system. We have about 6,200 employees, and about two-thirds of those are in the hospital and clinics, and about a third in the schools and university physicians. $862 million of total revenue for the health system. About three-fourths of that is in the hospital and clinics, about a fourth in the schools, and about $48 million in annual research grants. So that gives you a little bit of sense about the size and the scope of what we do. Finally, I want to Curator Fraser and others of you have asked, well, so how did that work out when the Pitts Group sat down with you and looked at scorecards? As you know, one of President Forsey's goals is to focus as much as we can on defining where it is we want to go, making targets, and working hard to hit them. So one of the things that the Pitts Group did that I find very helpful was to focus us with a sort of a 3x4 matrix where we look at quantity, quality, and efficiency on one axis, and the traditional, the three traditional missions and the fourth of economic development on another. And each school, the university physicians, and the hospital and clinics have all contributed, and each of them has their own targets for these areas. And I want to go through these so you get I'm certainly not going to go into any detail, but I want you to have a sense about what are the kinds of things that we're measuring and what are the kinds of things we're looking at. In terms of education and quantity, we're looking at the total graduates. You probably know there's a perceived and probably real shortage of healthcare providers in the country, and certainly in Missouri, and certainly in some underserved areas. So we have an interest in increasing the quantity of our graduates. In terms of quality, exam scores, diversity, and so forth, I'll show you some examples specifically. Efficiency, the schools have looked at credit hours per faculty and student debt. The average student debt, of a graduating medical student is about $130,000. We would like it to be less than that at a public school. In terms of research, we're looking at funding and publications. In terms of quality, what are the top journals that we should be publishing in? And in terms of efficiency, how many grant dollars per FTE researcher? Clinical service, this is an area where you probably don't spend as much time. Work RVUs is the way we measure the work of physicians, the total work of physicians and nurse practitioners. The total visits in our system were 600,000 or 700,000 visits, looking to increase. What's the market share in our 25-county area? In terms of quality, patient satisfaction, and several CMS indicators, you'll hear the term CMS from me more than once this morning. That's the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, a big regulator and payer of our work. I'm going to show you examples of both of these in a few minutes. And in terms of efficiency, what's the length of stay in our hospital and what's the total margin of our health system financially? And Kevin Nikas will tell you a little bit more about that. We are certainly less well developed in terms of our understanding of measuring economic development and setting targets. But the things we're looking at are revenue for our region, the percentage of our graduates that stay in Missouri, because we have very good statistics demonstrating the economic impact of health professionals, particularly in Missouri's rural communities, and intellectual property. What's our contribution to economic development from intellectual property? So those are the kinds of parameters we're looking at. I want to move into some specifics, and I'll start with education. For almost all the slides that I have, Missouri, our students are in gold or yellow, and the national comparator is here in red. These are two examples of board scores. These are certification scores at the end of a professional education. For the nursing school, you can see here over the last 4 years we've ranked substantially higher in terms of pass rates than the national average. And over here is the physical therapy licensure scores and pass rates for our School of Physical Therapy and Department of Physical Therapy, I should say. And you can see that those are also substantially higher than the national pass rates, and we're proud about that. It's another story. This is from the School of Medicine. Fascinating, really, in terms of what you can do with a courageous change in the curriculum. Back in the mid-1990s, we changed to a problem-based curriculum. We knew that that would give our students a way to think more like practicing physicians and to behave more like team members. We knew that they would enjoy it more and the faculty would enjoy teaching more. All that was true. We had no idea that this would happen. So this yellow line, again, are board scores of our medical student graduates. These are board scores of all the rest of the medical school graduates in the United States. This is time from 1997 on, and you can see shortly after we implemented the new curriculum, we had really a phenomenal change in our students' board scores. And over the last several years, these are 2 standard deviations above the national average, and it's a lot more fun. Turns out, unfortunately, it's a little more expensive, but we have people from all over the world now coming to look at our medical school and how we accomplish this, because not all the schools that have moved to problem-based learning have been able to do this. So here's an area that about which we're not so proud. A lot of the information that we have, a lot of the information I'll display to you comes from the Association of American Medical Colleges. It's a much more robust way of managing and sending us back data than we have for the School of Health Professionals or the School of Nurses. This is feedback we get on an annual basis on 6 different parameters about the mission of our medical school. You can see here that this is a percentage of faculty who are women. This is percentage of faculty who are minorities. A little bit less than the national average here for female faculty, but about half the national average here for the percentage of our faculty that are minorities. And this is in Dean Churchill's site, and those of you who know Dean Churchill know that he gets missile lock, and I'm pretty sure in the next 2 or 3 years we'll be able to show you some changes that way. But that's one of those areas where I promised the curators and the president that I would show you the areas in which we're pleased and also areas where we need improvement, and that's one of them. In terms of research, it's fairly standard to measure a school, a medical school in particular, is progression through NIH research funding. So these are a sampling of Midwestern, I'll just say regional schools of medicine. and this is their NIH ranking, 1 through about 130, and this is the total amount of NIH funding. I would tell you that Washington University I always put out there because it's always the top 5 in the United States, and you can see that the next best school is the University of Iowa at far less than half as much as Washington U. Develops quite a machine in terms of research at Washington University. I want to demonstrate the University of Missouri Columbia is fairly far down on the list, 92, but based on work of Dean Bill Christ and others over the last 5 to 7 years, we've moved from 92 to 89 to 82nd, and we've moved from about 17 million to about 23 million in NIH funding. I want to point out a couple of things. NIH funding represents actually only about half of the grant funding to the School of Medicine. It's one issue. The second issue, Chancellor Deaton talked to you about how work on our campus is interdisciplinary, and we want to keep it that way. One of the things that's unusual, if not unique, about the University of Missouri in terms of Midwestern universities is a lot of NIH funding is actually on the university campus, not in the School of Medicine, and that's a little bit unusual. If you look, on the other hand, at the number of collaborators from the School of Medicine that are collaborating with principal investigators on NIH grants that are not in the School of Medicine, it's surprisingly high. So this is really, I think, a deceptively low number. We have it in our sights to move it up, and I think we should be able to do that in the next 5 years. But I definitely don't want to give our faculty the message that we should be increasing the School of Medicine's NIH funding at the expense of the collaboration with the campus, because that's a real strength in our place. So this, I also wanted to tell you that this is a proclamation from the State Senate of Missouri, and it is a proclamation that awarded our School of Nursing, that it recognized our School of Nursing's outstanding performance in research. If you look at the total amount of research dollars in schools of nursing in the United States and divide by the number of faculty, our Sinclair School of Nursing was number 1 this year, and this was recognized in our state senate. So quite an accomplishment for the School of Nursing. This is the only slide, I promise you, that will be whining in nature, and then I'll move on. But I think when I show you that we're ranked 82nd in terms of NIH funding and other areas where we fall short of our own expectations, I also think it's important to understand about the resources we're working with. This is also data from the Association of American Medical Colleges. We don't produce this data. They do. This is the ranking of all the public schools of medicine. This happens to be for 2007. They produce it every year, and it doesn't change very much. This is funding from the state to a medical school adjusted for the per student, so it's adjusted for size. And you can go up and down the list here and see that the University of Missouri Columbia is down here near the bottom at $37,000 per student. For whatever reason, a couple of curators have said, well, how does that look like compared to Kansas? And there's Kansas up there at $107,000 per student. If you look down here and do the back of the envelope math, if the University of Missouri received the same funding per student as the University of Kansas, that's a difference of about $28 million a year. That would actually double Dr. Churchill's School of Medicine GO budget. If you think about $28 million a year, that's a lot. If you think about $280 million over a decade and what kind of School of Medicine you can create going from good to great to outstanding, that's the difference right there. So no whining, and we hope to move up that list. And by the way, parenthetically, before I move on from that, I don't have information for nursing schools or for schools of health profession or for campuses in general, but I would be surprised, frankly, if the rest of the MU campus and the other campuses in the system are much different than that. But what I know is that it's very hard for us to gain this national status that we would like with that sort of funding stream. No more whining. So my guess is that most of you are pretty accustomed to seeing quality measured in terms of grant funding, number of students, board scores, and so forth, but that most of you probably don't spend much time thinking about clinical quality, and in our world that's a pretty big deal. So I want to land there for just a minute and talk with you about how that happens. it's important for you to know that where we work on the patient care side, the sweet spot is really this value proposition, which is to say, what's the quality we provide over the cost? And I'll show you when we come to healthcare reform why that's going to be so important for us. It's important now. We've been paying attention to this for at least 5 years, and it will become more important as time goes on. So how do we measure quality and how do we count for quality? We think of quality in terms of outcomes. These are the kind of general health outcomes that you would normally think of, and in terms of patient satisfaction. It's also important for you to know that we have, in any given year, several hundred, literally, measures of quality that are produced in our system, and they come from 3 principal sources. Some of them come from the outside, that is regulatory agencies, such as the Joint Commission on Accreditation of Hospitals and CMS, the aforementioned services of Medicare and Medicaid. Some of them come because we request special certification. So we are certified as a center of excellence for chest pain, for example, for trauma, and in several other areas. In order to be certified, we have to provide quality data to the accrediting agencies, and they have to say, yes, you have attained a level of quality that's high enough to be accredited. And third, we have a number of areas where we ourselves internally expect to improve the quality of care. So we have programs in pancreatitis, in hip fractures, and so forth, where we've been interested, not external sources. So there are dozens of clinical conditions and hundreds of measures where we look at quality, and I'll give you just a few of them. So this is from the centers. This is from CMS, from Medicare data. This is a composite, as will the next one be, of 5 different scores of our system on the quality of surgical care that we provide. This goes back to 2006. These red bars you'll see on this and the next slide are the CMS top 10%. You can see that since 2005, we've been making steady progress and hit the top 10% for this quarter back here, but we haven't quite achieved it for everywhere. These are probably 75th percentile, which is very good, but this is where we want ourselves to be, up near the top. We have actually attained the top for this one. This is care for acute myocardial infarction or heart attacks. This is, again, it's a 5-measure composite that comes for the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. And by the way, for those of you in the audience who might be smokers, I apologize. One of my colleagues looked at this and said, it looks like a line of lit cigarettes. And this is not meant to be a subliminal message that it's time for you to go out and smoke. It just worked out that way. Another colleague said, don't show them that slide. That makes it look like a chip shot. I mean, everything is up there at the top. We are, in fact, at the very top of the biz in terms of acute myocardial infarction care. What you don't see is that we started our program on quality improvement in 1997. So there's been a dedicated team to this particular area since we're working for more than 10 years. And in our biz, that's how you get there. Here's an area that we're not so proud of. This is a patient satisfaction measure, also from Medicare. And this is a response to a question from people who are on Medicare, who are discharged from a hospital. Would you definitely recommend this hospital to a friend or family? So this is a 5 on a 5-point scale. National average is 68%, and I would just pause and say, think about that for a minute. Think of the current state of healthcare in the United States, and think that only about 2/3 of people would recommend the hospital that they've just been in across the nation to friends and family. We have a lot of work to do. 66% of people said that in Missouri hospitals, 77% said that at Columbia Regional Hospital, and only 62% at University Hospital. So this is an area that we have in our sights to improve. You should also know that these, of course, aren't static numbers. These data are about a year old. And I also want to show you this. We do also have a team working on improving patient satisfaction. So we have a number of items that we're doing to make people want to come back to our hospital. Most of these, by the way, are not things like did you think you had a good doctor? Those are always rated high. These are what's the quality of the food? Did you like being in a room with somebody else? Was the parking easy? Did we check you out easily or not? Was it a big hassle to be in the hospital? We're not as good as we need to be about that, and we're working hard to do so. This is just a quick slide to show you that we don't only focus on inpatient care. This is one brief one from the outpatient side. I just saw this data 2 days ago, and I thought I would bring it to your attention. One of the things that you'll be hearing about in terms of health reform are medical homes. This is a concept that's about 5 years old. It's kind of the reinvention, in my view, of primary care. It has a lot of very interesting components to it. We have a quite robust medical home program at the university in our primary care clinics. And this is one of the areas where the collaboration with the Cerner company has been very helpful. So we've used a variety of software and a change in our care processes to go. These are 3 different clinics that you'll see here, and this is what we call a perfection score. So this is getting 8 out of 8 of the CMS indicators for diabetes perfect every time. You might say, well, that's great, but you went from 10% to 20%. That doesn't sound very good. Our colleagues at Duke are doing a similar program, and they were happy to get from 5% to 10%. Obviously, this will go up over time. It's important to know that this is 6-month data, and we only see diabetic patients frequently every 3 to 6 months, so it's not likely to change instantly. But this is the kind of thing that we're focusing on. Like I said, dozens of initiatives. We're not perfect in everything. We're very good in some things. I'll move on a little bit to the second part of what I talked about from the PITS management group, which is to re-look at the mission and vision. Each of the schools and the hospital and clinics has its own mission and vision, but this is the one we're working on that looks at what we do as a group. I won't spend a lot of time here, but I want you to understand that improving the health, well-being, and potential of the people of Missouri and beyond is sort of the operative piece, that we're doing that through exemplary patient and family-centered care, education, and research. This is was a theme that the deans and Mr. Ross landed very heavily on, and I'll show you some more ramifications of that. These are what we call strategic issues. These are the things right now that the deans and Jim Ross and I and others are working on. So recruiting and retaining for interdisciplinary patient-centered care, doing some things that are unusual in health systems. We're actually sitting down with the HR people. Who are the people that hire the employees in our hospital? Who selects medical students? Who selects our medical and surgical residents? And what kind of person are we trying to get in our front door? This will be, I predict this will be a singular and important thing we're doing. We have brought in the Ritz-Carlton group, and we're looking at trying to find out whether a short interview that specifically looks at one's ability to be interdisciplinary and team-centered and patient-centered will make a difference. We think it will. The Mayo Clinic has been doing this for about 5 years and finds it very helpful. We're going to focus a lot on partnerships amongst the schools around the campus and between our hospital and clinics and partners in our 60-mile radius. We're going to be looking a lot at interdisciplinary education and research. My favorite theme here is that we produce the plurality of physicians, nurses, and other health professions in our state. But from my perspective, it's as though Coach Anderson were to have the guards practice in one corner of the gym and the centers in another quarter and the forwards in another corner of the gym. And when the game starts and the ball goes up for the tip-off, that's the first time those people have worked together. That's kind of how we do education in the health professions. We're not going to do that anymore. So we have the 3 deans and their associates working to figure out, well, what part of an education of a nurse and a doctor should be the same? How do doctors and nurses learn to work better in a team function? I think this will do well for us. I already mentioned that we do very well already in terms of interdisciplinary research. It's a real plus, frankly, at the university, and that's a culture that's been established on the campus and flows over to the 3 schools. Finally, I want to talk a little bit about this one. I have to credit Jim Ross for helping me move this idea. And this is an intersection of 2 ideas that you'll be hearing more about in the future. The first is, what is the state's university and its medical school sitting right in the middle of the state? What is our role in what I call the health of the public? We know we have a very good idea of what are the diseases that kill Missourians and disable Missourians. I won't give you the quiz about what the top 5 are. You may know them, but I'm pretty sure that most of our state legislators don't. The ones that kill people, by the way, aren't necessarily the ones that disable people, something that people don't think about often. So what is our responsibility for that? And I will tell you that if you look at national data, Missouri does not fare very well in terms of how long people live, what's the rate of heart disease for Missourians, stroke, pretty much you name it across the board, we're in that bottom 5 or so states. So what's our responsibility there? And we're cross-producting that, if you will, with another idea, which is what's called service lines. Most of the time in an academic health center, if you get admitted to the hospital for a heart attack, you'll probably see a cardiologist, a cardiothoracic surgeon, probably a nurse, you'll probably have a primary care doctor, a variety of people, all of whom, frankly, work in different departments and different, I hate to use the word, silos. So what does it look like if those people are actually part of a team that works together regularly rather than on occasions? And that's the kind of we're working on. We call it service lines. You can sort of imagine how that will work for cardiology, oncology, and a variety of other things. It's disruptive because most of our physicians and nurses already work within departments, and it's successful to work within departments. Financially, that works out well. But in terms of patient care, not so great. So when Jim Ross and I talk about putting those two ideas together, we talk about something that looks like this. If you were to take cardiovascular disease, for example, we would say, well, what's the role of our health sciences center in starting way at the beginning and say, what's our role in preventing heart disease? What's our role for screening and early detection? What's our role in the acute care of persons with heart attacks? You've seen what we can do. That's where we spend most of our time now. What happens after the heart attack? How good are we at taking care of people and preventing congestive heart failure? And finally, at the end of life, don't we have a responsibility to help people learn better how to die with dignity at home with their family? So if you put those two things together, that becomes an organizing theme for a lot of research and clinical programs, and you'll be hearing more about that from us for the next year. I think it's an exciting idea. It will break down some barriers to accomplish it, but I think we can do it. So very short list of bragging items or updates. You've heard about our new buildings. This is the tower. We begin construction by demolition. That building is not there. That is the artist's conception, but the demolition around it has begun. This is the Missouri Orthopedic Institute, and as you probably recall, we'll be moving into that and the new Children's Hospital, hopefully not in the same week, sometime between next spring and summer. Really excited about that. It's a long time coming. I won't mention that 2 floors here we hope to be Ellis Fischel Cancer Center. I already talked to you a little bit about the notoriety of our School of Nursing. Lots of high fives around our neck of the woods from Dr. Judy Miller, the Dean of the School of Nursing, and lots of other folks. Great accomplishment for them. You've heard something about the Tiger Institute. I think it's the most helpful for you to think of this as a 10-year commitment between 2 organizations to innovate. I'm excited about it. There'll be some bumps to go over. Jeff Townsend, who's basically the number 2 person at Cerner, has spent a lot of time in our shop. We're getting the kind of attention I think we need from Cerner and vice versa to make that run. Sherry Brown is the executive director. I work 2 offices down from her temporarily. She's great. I think this is going to be, you're going to hear a lot more about this in the future, and I think it's going to be very positive. Dr. Deaton mentioned the Mizzou Advantage. We think this is a really important program for the health-related schools, certainly in the One Health, One Medicine, but also in the disruptive technology in a number of areas where health professions and nursing will be involved. The School of Health Professions, I think, has a really cool program that interdigitates with some of the things that the curators and the chancellors have been talking about. This is called the Missouri Health Professions Consortium. So our School of Health Professions has partnered with a number of rural schools to put people, more and more of our graduates out in rural areas. The School of Medicine has a program called MedZoo. This is a clinic for indigent patients. It's run by medical students, nursing students, and health profession students. About 2,500 hours there, volunteer hours there, of faculty and students last year. Very exciting, a great thing to do. I'll be brief and move quickly through. Those are not grapes. That's the virus that you don't want to get. I will only show that these three graphs to show you don't spend a lot of time looking at those. I show those so that you understand in our emergency room and our busiest clinics and on our inpatient side, we're looking very carefully at the rates of H1N1 in all of our settings. I had enough data to plot for Missouri S&T and MU the rates at which we're seeing influenza-like symptoms, students with those. I'll only point out that the rates have come down, leveled off. That's great. Don't know whether this change from 100 to 163 is a real phenomenon, a temporary blip, or whether, as some people said, that's because a lot of students spend a lot of time in the rain at the Nebraska game. But for whatever reason, that's gone up substantially, and that may be something that we need to pay attention to. I will tell you that our adult intensive care units have not seen an influx of H1N1 disease, which is what we expect. This is a disease of younger people. Our pediatric hospital in the last 2 weeks, however, has been very busy, and about 80% of the admissions are for flu-like illnesses, including to the pediatric intensive care unit. No deaths there at this point. Very briefly, this is another benefit of working with the Cerner company. You can see Columbia right there in the middle. We're one of the early signees to this, what I call a Sentinel program. They tap data from our emergency rooms to track the course of epidemics, and particularly the H1N1. And you notice that last week, Missouri was one of the states that had a 10% increase in the number of positive H1N1 cultures. So those are the kind of things that we'll be able to do in this partnership with Cerner. Bottom line on H1N1, it is so far a kind of an ordinary flu epidemic that's out of sync with the timing of seasonal flu epidemics. The big fear, of course, is that it will mutate and we'll have a disaster on our hands. I will say that the MU campus has, as Dr. Deaton pointed out, we've been working very carefully with our community and with the hospital. That group meets very regularly and have several layers of mitigation plans. Very briefly, healthcare reform in MU. This is just the newspapers, a bunch of newspapers. Can you move that one backwards? Thank you. If for some reason this one clicks forward, I'll just tell you that these are newspapers from, I think, one day. Lots of headlines about health reform. I think all of us 6 or 8 months ago had great expectations for health reform, thank you. Had great expectations for health reform. Now none of us is so sure. Insurance companies believe that we were all going to be insured, and that would be a boon for them. Employers believe that some of the financial monkey would be off their back. Providers thought that the people we weren't getting paid for before would get paid for now. And all of you in the general citizenry thought that you were going to get a higher quality of care for less money. And I think it's a little bit like this girl who went to the beach to walk her dog, to go swimming, and to have some fun. I don't really know any more than you do what's going to come out of the health reform, but I think some things that we can clear up, that we can pretty clearly tee up that are going to be important to us. Whether Medicare and Medicaid funding will be very important things for us. Most people believe that to keep the cost down, Medicare and Medicaid funding will go down. Whether that's going to be mitigated by increased funding for the about $40 to $45 million we provide now in uncompensated care is unclear, but that's the balance we're watching. Graduate medical education. This is the funding for our residency programs. It's also under some attack, very important to us. And finally, HIT funding. This one looks like the one that probably will come through and fits very well with our information technology programs. Again, want to just mention this is the sweet spot. If we keep our eyes on this prize, I think we'll be okay. These are 6 things that are going to happen no matter whether the Republicans win or the Democrats win. We're going to be doing more reporting about quality, even more than I showed you. We're going to get paid based on that quality. We're going to not get paid for things that are considered avoidable readmissions for congestive heart failure, for example. We will be pushed towards being accountable care organizations, meaning You get one reimbursement across your organization for one disease episode. Medical homes I mentioned, and lots of attention will be made, I think, to what we call meaningful health information technology. Frankly, I think we're pretty well situated for these right now. It's helpful that we have a consolidated system in which the hospital and the physicians are now able to work together. All of these things will be to the advantage of organizations that are able to do that. I'm going to stop now, and Kevin's going to come up and tell you some good news, I think, about our financial situation, and then I'll let President Forsey and Curator Fraser let questions be asked or not, depending on the time. Kevin.
Thank you, Dr. Williamson. I'm going to quickly go through 3 slides. One of the more important parts of this, though, although CFOs report this, and I think you're going to see some good news this morning, it's thanks to Dr. Williamson, Jim Ross, Dr. Churchill, and an operating group that really makes these numbers work that you'll see this morning. For the year ended June 30th, 2009, these are audited figures. We ended up the year at $30,160,000 on a budget of $30 million. What was a trend the last time we got together in the non-operating area, there's a shortfall there of $16 million between the $11 million and the $27, but we were able to bring expenses down by $18 million, $557 million versus $575 to offset this mark-to-market issue on the investments. So we ended up on budget at $30 million for the year. And as you look at the financial ratios, it reflects the positive results for the year. But the 2 numbers that we certainly watch is down here at the base, the 171 days cash on hand is up from last year. We were at 156, which means that 15 days increase translates to about $22 million. So after we bought $45 million worth of capital assets, we were still able to increase the days cash on hand. And one of the ways that we did this last year, our days revenue and receivables at the very bottom here at 50 were at 63, and we've made some changes in management and some of the systems, and that 13 days is equal to about $17 million. So this is cash that helps finance the $280 million building program that we're committed to, that Dr. Williamson talked about. If you go to the September financials, Mike, if you can forward that, thank you. The trend continues. We're at the end of the first quarter. We're a little bit ahead, about $1 million at $11.2 million versus a $10.2 million figure. We're being helped by the non-operating line. The investment income is picking up this year, where last year it was a little bit of a shortfall, and the operating expenses are helping offset a little bit of a shortfall up there in net revenues. But year-to-date, first quarter, we're about $1 million ahead. And you can see down here in the ratios, it's positive because of this. And now our days cash on hand is at 200 days cash on hand versus 170. We recouped about $25 million from the bonds that were issued in July for expenses that we had incurred on the Orthopedic Institute, because we have to spend that money within 2 years. So that 200-day figure is more for going forward on the $203 million patient tower we're building. But it certainly has been years' worth of work, and I remember when I first came to the university, and Nikki told me stories in 2001 of being concerned there is a level at 85 days cash on hand that Moody's was concerned about, and today we're at 200, which is certainly the right direction for what we need to do on the buildings. The last slide is just an update. Last time the board was together, there was some questions, and we added effective July 1st the University of Missouri Psychiatric Center. This was previously with the state, with Mid-Missouri Psychiatric Center. We started and opened on July 1st and took over from the state, and Jim Ross and Dr. Loriello Dr. Williamson have really been working hard to make this successful, and I think that's very true. When you look at those admission numbers at 494, we're up 34% over the same period in the prior year. So we're taking care of 34% more patients than in the prior quarter when you compare it. And we're able to do that by taking the patient length of stay down 39%. And anytime you can take care of 34% more patients and have them discharged from a facility, it is a real credit to Dr. Loriello and the operating team. For the year-to-date revenues, it's $4.1 million, which means on an annual basis it'll be $16 to $17 million. Although we're in the first quarter and we're talking to CMS and some other people, we still believe we'll be break even or maybe even a little bit better, but into it for 3 months, it's still positive. If things continue, and certainly the results on that 34% and 39% increase is really good news from a patient standpoint and from the physician standpoint. We've received, just to give you an update, we received $13 million from the state to help us renovate that facility that needed some repairs. We've received $6.55 million of it, which was in House Bill 3. The remainder we get it as we spend to renovate the facility. But it's all pretty positive, and we're pretty optimistic, and we think it was a real step forward for psychiatry in the state. With that, I would...
Just a quick question. Yes. I remember when we approved this that it was conditioned upon approval of, I believe it was a Medicaid reimbursement.
Very correct. Very correct.
Did we get that?
It is progressing forward. We sent in the request, and they sent us back a number of questions. We have now responded with the state. We're doing it with the Department of Mental Health and the state, and it has gone back with the response.
So we're working in progress.
Yes.
Could you just make a point to keep us advised?
Certainly.
As I recall, that was a key factor to ongoing break-even status.
If that does not materialize, believe me, that break-even statement after the budgeted net income will change, and we certainly will update you.
I'm sure interested in that.
Certainly. Thank you. Any other questions? Otherwise, I'll turn it back to Dr. Williamson.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Dr. Williamson, thank you for a comprehensive and informative report. You lead a very, very important part of this university in lots of different respects, and certainly one of them is financial, but not just financial. And we have allocated a big part of our debt capacity to health efforts. So it's really important for us to stay on top and be informed of what's going on there, and we thank you for that informative report this morning. It's time for us to take a break, but if we could maybe have a couple of questions, if there are some out there for Dr. Williamson.
Dr. Williamson, 2 quick points. First of all, I appreciate very much the university trying to think out of the boxes, how you treat patients. I think there was a article in the New York Times about 2 weeks ago on the treatment of breast cancer, very similar to the approach you're talking about with cardiovascular disease. If you don't have a copy, I'd be happy to forward that on to you.
Thank you.
Where are we with the pharmacy? Are you responsible for the pharmacy program on the Columbia campus with UMKC, and where are we on that? Is that up and running yet, or?
Yes, it is up and running. That actually is administered through the School of Health Professions, and yes, it's up and running. We have pharmacy students and actually pharmacy residents on the Columbia campus now, and I think that it has actually reached the peak number of students that we projected.
Now, I never really asked enough questions. If I'm on the Columbia campus, at some point do I have to go over to Kansas City to complete my degree, or can I? Does it all take place on the Columbia campus?
I think it all takes place on the Columbia campus. Yes. That's my understanding, and I will find out for you. Yes, sir.
I understand why you may not want to do this, but when you have regional comparisons, if you did in your early slides, of medical schools around the country and so forth, I would like to see the medical school or other medical school at UMKC
see on that list, wherever it fits, I think it gives you the bigger picture, seeing all those are both of those are under our responsibility.
Be happy to do that, or be happy to work with Chancellor Morton about that.
I just wanted to make the comment that it was a little over a year ago that we approved this reorganization that we've now had our first report on, and its depth, its breadth, and its commitment to excellence, its ability to measure performance is shocking to me in how good it is. And of the votes I'm proud of, the vote to approve that reorganization in the way we did it is, I think, confirmed, Dr. Williamson, by your report today. I think we got that one right.
We not only got the organization right, we got the leadership right.
Amen.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Williamson. Let's take, we've been at this a long time. Let's take a 10-minute break. I have 11:13, so 11:23.
Absolutely, he's phenomenal.
We'll reconvene. We're down to the consent agenda. Are there any items that need specific comment or need to be separately considered outside of the consent agenda? If not, we'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Okay. Second. You make the motion.
I think Judy Haggart made the motion. I think Curator Carnahan seconded the motion. Discussion. All in favor signify by saying, oh, no, we want to call a roll here, don't we? Used to my other role here.
Yes.
Curator Downing is absent. Curator Erdman.
Yes.
Curator Fraser.
Yes.
Curator Good.
Aye.
Curator Haggard.
Yes.
Curator Russell.
Yes.
Curator Wassinger.
Yes.
Thank you. That's a vote of 8 no, sir.
Okay, Judy, the Academic, Student, and External Affairs Committee.
Our committee discussed 2 information items during the subcommittee meeting Thursday. The first was Caring for Missourians initiative and the statewide plan to provide more healthcare graduates at the 4-year public institutions in the state. The plan, which has been prepared for presentation to the governor under the leadership of the University of Missouri, calls for an additional 471 new seats for students. Of this total, 118 are permanent increases and 353 are temporary additions. The total statewide funding received for the initiative is $33.4 million, and the University of Missouri received $24.2 million of the funding for its 9 healthcare colleges and schools, and a great example of the collaboration that we're doing with other schools as well. The committee also discussed the changing role of the community colleges nationally and in Missouri, and the university's efforts to address this developing role over the past several years. Those trends included dramatic increases in enrollment, including the wide range of students attending community colleges, the community college focus on distance and online learning, Obama administration's attention and financial support for community colleges, transfer of credit and student success and advanced courses, the University of Missouri's partnership with 2-year institutions, and future plans at the 4 campuses of the University of Missouri to develop additional relationships with community colleges. The committee took action on 2 new programs at the University of Missouri-Columbia. The committee voted to approve the Bachelor of Arts degree in Film Studies as well as the Master of Science and PhD degree program in Clinical and Translational Sciences. Lastly, the committee voted to approve the changes to the collective rules and regulations Section 110.005 on the use of facilities and equipment, acceptable use policy. So the thing that we have to do today is to actually have the board vote on the 2 new degree programs, Can we roll that into one?
We'd entertain a motion to do both of those at the same time.
Both of those at the same time, and again, that's the Bachelor of Arts degree in Film Studies and the Master's and PhD program in Clinical and Translational Sciences. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there discussion? Kathy, call the roll.
Curator Bradley? Curator Carnahan?
Yes.
Curator Downing is absent. Curator Erdman?
Yes.
Curator Frazier?
Yes.
Curator Good? Curator Haggard?
Yes.
Curator Russell?
Yes.
Curator Wassinger?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes yours, Judy, I guess. Okay, John, the audit report.
We had a fairly short audit committee meeting. We had both a public session and a closed session. And the audit committee had 5 information items and 3 action items yesterday. The first information item was review of the internal audit engagement letter by Vice President Krawitz, and this is the last year of a second contract that was, I think, we had a 5-year contract, and then we went into a second 5-year term. And the committee is going to be looking at different options, and I'll discuss that a little bit more in a moment. John Tavardik, the partner of our engagement, presented information items, review of the internal audit plan, and reviewed the risk assessment that was completed last year, and they formed the foundation of the last 3-year audit plan, and they updated us. And he explained a little bit how it's changed and how they rotate depending on the request of the university as well as what they perceive the needs to be. He went on to the third information item, which is the semi-annual internal audit, and we discussed the past findings, and he gave us a chart, if you'll remember. I think there was a red and a gold code explaining high risk and where we were and the items that were past due and where they were on that process. He went on to give us our fourth information item, that was the internal audit quarterly report, and he reviewed 4 audits that were completed over the last quarter, and one was on restricted gift spending and no findings, and one on executive expenses, and that had 3 findings of medium risk that have already been addressed. Third audit was on electronic data retention and records management, and the university has a comprehensive record management policy over hard copies. Work needs to be done on electronic record keeping. I think that was the one that also dealt with the number of servers out there and who had control and what the game plan to get those back within a more uniform system. And also they're developing a cost-benefit analysis of the best way to address the issues. Oh, and no, that was the decentralized IT security controls at the UMKC campus and improving security. The fourth information item was Susan Eichhoff with our external auditors. They reviewed the fiscal year 2009 external audit, required communication that's been completed with the audit committee, and we received an unqualified opinion on both the university's consolidated financial statements and the healthcare system's financial statements. On the action items, we approved the minutes of the audit committee. We had 2 meetings that we needed to approve. We reviewed and approved the audit committee matrix that would be used to guide the work. That's more like a checklist that we have. While we're talking about that, we've already. My hope is that at the December meeting, we'll go through that matrix at the beginning of the meeting just to remind us what's in there. We've already asked Nikki to update it in one regard, and hopefully she'll give us some suggested language. So once again, that's just a checklist so that we have consistency. This is a new committee of the board. We'll hopefully have consistency going forward of how we deal with the audit issues. Let's see here. We went into executive session. We met with both our external and our internal auditors. We discussed things. This is the first time I think we've had a meeting with them and without management being present. It was a good meeting. We learned quite a bit. We have a better understanding of the process, and look forward to continuing that procedure. We have some follow-up we're going to be working with Steve's office on. I think we're going to ask for a more detailed report from our auditors, Nikki, about what they actually do, the time, total expenses. I know you were going to give us a brief report on how other universities deal with internal audits. Some universities have their own internal audit staff. They don't hire it out. We seem to have a very good, I'm not suggesting or even I don't think we'll consider changing what we do, but at least we'll have a better understanding of what the process is, because once again, that contract is coming up for rebidding or review of how we're going to deal with it in the future. And let's see. In the future, probably at the December meeting, Nikki's office is going to be giving us a list of the a little better understanding of the joint ventures that the university is involved in, and who's responsible for auditing those joint ventures, as well as a more detailed list of the foundations and the audit reports on those foundations and who's responsible for those, just so we make sure we understand everything that's taking place in the university audit process. And that would be the end of my report.
Do you have an action item, John, or on the matrix? Did you want to ask a question on it?
You think we need it?
Under board action on the
Okay.
matrix.
Could we have a motion to approve the matrix, I guess? So moved.
Okay, we've got to have a motion and a second to approve that matrix. Discussion? Kathy?
Okay. Curator Bradley?
Aye.
Curator Carnahan?
Yes.
Curator Downing is absent. Curator Erdman?
Yes.
Curator Frazier?
Yes.
Curator Good? Curator Haggard? Yes. Curator Russell?
Yes.
Curator Wassinger?
Yes.
That's a vote of 8 no, sir.
Two meetings of the Compensation and Human Resources Committee since our last full board meeting. The first was at 10:30 on Thursday, August 20th, held via the telepresence centers. Because not all curators were able to participate, I'm just going to hit the highlights. I might turn everyone's attention to the minutes of the meeting, which the committee approved yesterday. For those who were not able to participate in this full-day discussion, which was, in my opinion, probably one of the most informational days I've had on the board, there is an excellent summary contained of that meeting in the minutes. Because those minutes are available to each of you to read in more detail, I just want to hit some of the highlights. This was a comprehensive review of our total compensation package with focus both on base salary and on benefits. I think a moment needs to be taken to recognize the work of Vice President Betsy Rodriguez and her staff and those she works with at each of the campuses. This is probably the most thorough A to Z, soup to nuts review we have done of compensation and benefits, and gave an excellent picture of where we stand. It focused on total compensation, including salary overview and a comparison to our peer institutions. It gave us a detailed review of our benefit programs and their comparison to our peer institutions. We discussed the University of Missouri System retirement and benefit program and its complexity. And then we rolled all that up into a consolidated comparison of benefit and value for our employees as compared to employees from peer institutions at our campuses. I would think that it's hard to summarize a day's worth of work in a moment or two, but I think it would be fair to say that we're all continue to be worried that our base salaries are not competitive with our peer institutions, and that is a daunting task at a time when economic uncertainties are as uncertain as they are. I think we were, for the most part, pleased that our benefit programs are competitive. We have ongoing concerns about how we fund the retirement program in the future, and I think the day-long work in August allowed all of us to have maybe a more thorough understanding. The President did a very good job of summarizing, I think, his thoughts on it, and I know that those thoughts are kind of working their way into his plans for the future. So we will look forward to more input from the President and his staff on how we might address the shortcomings of our total compensation plan. But advise everybody, of course, that will have to be considered in the context of a very significant budget deficit that we may face depending on what happens with the Missouri economy. I believe the presentation in its entirety is available to members who were not able to participate. I know in the orientation, I think the new curators got a chance to look at it, but I would come out of it and tell you that I think we have extremely valuable employee information now that will serve us as a good tool as we try to make sure we remain competitive and can hold on to our best and brightest faculty. Yesterday, we had the second meeting of the committee under the normal order, and we considered 4 action items. Those action items are listed as items 2 through 5 in the board materials for the committee. Since everybody was in the meeting yesterday, I won't go through each of those because everyone participated in the committee's deliberations on those. The committee voted out unanimously to report all 4 of the technical corrections to the collected rules to the full board for approval. And so on behalf of the committee, I would move the adoption of items 2 through 5 in the board materials for action by the full board.
Second. Motion and a second. Discussion.
Curator Bradley?
Aye.
Curator Carnahan?
Yes.
Curator Downing is absent. Curator Erdman?
Yes?
Curator Frazier?
Yes.
Curator Good? Curator Haggard? Curator Russell?
Yes.
Curator Wassinger?
Yes.
Thank you. That's a vote of 8 no.
And finally, the committee went into executive session to consider a personnel and compensation matter, which I will bring a committee report to in closed session upon adjournment here.
Thank you, Warren.
I want to say that meeting that was held on the 20th that went all through all the benefits, salaries, all that was just excellent. Very fun.
Betsy deserves a lot, and Gary.
Very enlightening.
Very good.
Very enlightening to all of us, Warren. Yeah. Okay, Doug, the Finance Committee.
Mr. Chairman, the Finance Committee met yesterday, and I think all members of the board were present, so I won't recap all of the information items. We did have 3 information items. I will just remind everyone, though, that the 3rd information item dealt with the asset allocation for the endowment fund. There was a recommendation that was brought forward for consideration and discussion. That recommendation we brought to the board for action in December. So if there are any further thoughts or any further information you need, I would ask that you contact either Nikki or John and make sure that they're aware of any questions that you might have. We do have 3 action items that the Finance Committee is bringing forward. The first is the hiring of high-yield bank loan managers, and the Finance Committee recommends, and I bring in the form of a motion that we hire Shankman Capital Management and Oak Tree Capital Management for up to 12% of the retirement fund, and that we authorize Vice President Crowlitz to move forward with that. I so move.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Kathy?
Curator Bradley?
Aye.
Curator Carnahan?
Yes.
Curator Downing is absent. Curator Erdman?
Yes.
Curator Frazier?
Yes.
Curator Good? Curator Haggard? Curator Russell?
Yes.
Curator Wassinger?
No.
Thank you. That's a vote of 7 and 1.
The second action item deals with the hiring of managers for the emerging market debt, and on behalf of the Finance Committee, I move that we hire Capital Guardian Trust and Wellington Management Company for up to 5% of the retirement fund.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Kathy?
Thank you. Curator Bradley?
Aye.
Curator Carnahan?
Yes.
Curator Downing is absent. Curator Erdman?
Yes.
Curator Frazier?
Yes.
Curator Good?
Aye.
Curator Haggard? Yes. Curator Russell?
Yes.
Curator Wassinger?
No.
Thank you. That's a vote of 7 and 1, sir.
Just as a point concerning the hiring of those, we discussed just briefly the fees. I'd like to compliment Vice President Krowitz and John Miller for their work. They've negotiated the fees for all four of those managers, and there's significant savings because of what they've done. So we appreciate your work on that, and I understand you're going to continue to work with other managers to make sure that we're getting the best possible deal with respect to the fees. So, the last action item deals with the sole source contract. It's with Dresser Rand. It deals with the maintenance overhaul of MU's power plant's Dresser Rand steam turbine generator number 9 at an estimated cost of $1,165,000. On behalf of the Finance Committee, I move its approval.
We have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion. Kathy?
Curator Bradley?
Aye.
Curator Carnahan?
Yes.
Curator Downing is absent. Curator Erdman?
Yes.
Curator Frazier?
Yes.
Curator Good? Curator Haggard? Yes. Curator Russell?
Yes.
Curator Wassinger?
Yes.
Thank you. The vote of 8 no.
All right. Thank you.
Chairman, that concludes the Finance Committee.
Thank you, sir. Warren, back to you.
Yes. The Board of Curators Governance Committee met on August 21st. All the members were present. At that time, we took up several items that were referred to the Governance Committee during the Board's self-evaluation session that took place on June 4 in Kansas City. We did not vote on any matters, but we did bring up all of the topics that came out of the Board's annual self-evaluation process. The details of that discussion are contained in the minutes of the committee, which we will seek approval of from the committee members here in a moment. But again, as I did a moment ago, I'd like to kind of hit on the highlights of that discussion for those who were not involved. We discussed the delegations of authority. Under the bylaws, the executive committee is delegated the authority to take action on behalf of the full board, subject to that action being ratified, approved, or modified at the next session, at the next meeting of the Board of Curators. Similarly, the President is delegated general power to act for and on behalf of the Board and the University, subject to the bylaws, Board rules, and regulations, or upon specific instruction by the Board. There had been some discussion about the breadth of that delegation of authority, which is quite broad, and the committee members discussed at some length the breadth of that assignment of responsibility, but in the end decided that we do not recommend any change in the expression of authority that the Board gives to the Executive Committee and to the President.
Warren, is there a process of informing the Board of what is going on when, or I would say before that happens, that the Executive Committee is going to take up these issues, that the President is going to take up these issues on behalf of the Board? Do we know that and have an opportunity to call that person, email the Executive Committee, or somehow have input?
I'm not a member of the Executive Committee, so I might defer to the Chairman and the President on that.
Well, as a practical matter, we haven't had material issues that have come before the Executive Committee, and I would think that if that were the case, that we would share information. What we have done when there are important issues come, we have called board meetings, a full board meeting, and done it with the teleconference kind of thing, Wayne, rather than bypass the board. I think, Kathy?
Even if I may, the Executive Committee meetings are still posted to the entire Board, so the entire Board would see the agenda and the information going into that meeting.
Well, the
entire Board would be invited to attend, too.
That is correct.
So
they'd always, the answer is they'd always be aware of.
The second item that we discussed was the setting of the board meeting agenda. The process as described in the collected rules provides that the President to establish the meeting agenda that drives the meetings that we've just attended and others with the concurrence of the Board Chairman, and that the committee expressed comfort with that process. there had been some discussion in our self-evaluation of the method by which items come to the board agenda. And so we asked Steve to review that process under the collected rules. It's really pretty simple. The president sets the agenda with the concurrence of the chairman, and that they do that in the consultation with the committee chairs. So virtually any committee that has a matter to bring forward brings it to the president, and the president, in consultation with the board chair, puts it on the agenda. There was some discussion about that, additional discussion about where we hold our meetings, some thought that because we have a statewide mission, that we should branch our meetings out beyond just the 4 campuses. There was a lot of recognition of that statewide mission, but given the current budget constraints, travel expense restraints, and the need to be visible on the 4 campuses, we decided not to recommend a change in that, but did recommend to the president and to the chancellors that they continue to notify curators if they are going to be involved in public meetings, public presentations, civic groups, when in their areas, and as such decided not to change the current practice of having our meetings rotate among the campuses. Third item that came out of the annual self-assessment was the possible redundancy between the resources and planning and finance committees. There was some discussion about that redundancy, but I think the consensus was that the resources and planning committee really is a forward-looking committee that tries to do longer-range planning. The president's focus on accountability measures has really benefited from that process, and so it was decided by the governance committee not to recommend any change or further consolidation of those 2 committees. Another item that we brought up that was, again, from the self-review process conducted in June was the board's responsibility to conduct continuing education. We reviewed a number of existing and new continuing education ideas, including our current new curator orientation, which is very comprehensive and thorough and possibly longer than any of them like, but nonetheless very valuable. We talked about the number of meetings that take place per year, and there was a confirmation of the desire to kind of stick with our current plan of having 5 to 6 meetings a year, with one of those being telephonic, or maybe even using the telepresence centers, since they're now at our disposal. And we felt comfortable that the current meeting schedule and process for orientation and continuing education opportunities are adequate and sufficient, and ended that conversation with a discussion about encouraging all board members to participate in the continuing education opportunities that come along, including the annual spring Association of Governing Boards session that takes place annually. So I myself plan to participate in that next year and would encourage others to do so. The remainder of the discussion in the Governance Committee meeting is outlined in the minutes, but I'm not going to report in detail on because they were not material. We do need to approve the minutes from that meeting, and if okay with the chair, I would like to have the committee quickly approve the minutes that were in your materials and circulated in advance.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded by the committee members to approve the minutes of the Governance Committee meeting. Call the roll.
Yes.
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 Was there any other comments that would complete the report of the Governance Committee?
One just suggestion. I think we're now live. Are we still live on our curator meetings over the web? And we put it and they're archived too, so they're available. Could you give us a report, perhaps, at our December meeting of how many people are listening in, if you have that, and how many people access it, so we just have an idea of if we're reaching our market?
Okay, ready to go. Thank you, Warren. Again, David, Resources and Planning.
Okay, Resources and Planning Committee. First, want to welcome our new curators. David, and I know I've known Don Downing for years, and I've had a pleasure of meeting Wayne and David. And I'll tell you, good things come to those who wait. It took you a while to get on the board, but I'll tell you what, we got some winners. You got fine wine. You know, we took a little while to wait, but we've got some really, really strong board members that Jay Nixon appointed. So welcome aboard. And in that regard, I'll give you a little bit of a backdrop on this resources and planning, which is a longer-term perspective. I've been chair of this thing for 3 or 4 years. We have looked at this thing, and I think the consensus of the board, we'd like to take the university from good to great. The board as a whole, I think, refer to Jim Collins, who wrote that book. You struggle with whether or not you establish what you want to do and then get the people in to do it, or do you get the people in first and then figure out what you want to do. Jim Collins says, first who, then what? And what he says is, first who, then what? Those who build great organizations make sure they have the right people on the bus, the wrong people off the bus, and the right people in key seats before they figure out where to drive the bus. They always think about who and then about what. What we've done is we've got a very, very strong management team in right now, I think led by President Forsey, and I think we've got a very, very strong management team on each of the 4 campuses. So we, in my opinion, have the who in place. So that was step 1, part of the resources and planning committee. Now we're establishing what. And through President Forsey's leadership, I think he has taken this thing to a new level in terms of what a unit, where and what a university should do. And through his leadership, and I don't know how many countless hours his team ran through this thing, they have established, I've got a copy here, the review of system accountability measures, in, which you can just pick up the booklet and see how we're doing. I mean, it's real simple. Next month or our next board meeting in December, I think you're going to give a report as to what we're doing and how we're doing. Is that coming up, Gary? So as part of that, in August of this year, we had a meeting, a telepresence meeting, and you've heard the chancellors give discussions today. They've tied in all their strategic plans into this umbrella. You've heard our internal auditors say what great work these guys are doing. You've seen the record attendance at the stadium. This place is moving in the right direction. So all this, we can dwell on the negative. President Forsey has this ship moving in the right direction. So at the meeting, Vice President Krawitz provided an update on the strategic directions that the President presented to the board last fall, and that document is the university's roadmap for strengthening and enhancing the university. The roadmap includes goals and enabling strategies grouped around 5 strategic themes: teaching and learning, research and discovery, service and engagement, economic development, and the administrative functions that support the themes. Those are aligned with and reflect the campus strategic plans that we heard about this morning. The committee was provided with a report on the actions that were completed during fiscal year 2009. Vice President Krawitz also reported on initiatives to improve effectiveness and efficiency of the university in 2009. She described the actions taken during the year as part of the stewardship of the university's resources. These actions had a $100 million impact on the university in 2009. $64 million was achieved through cost management and cost avoidance as a result of competitive contracting, cost controls on travel, training and meetings, workforce reductions and a hiring freeze, energy conservation and technology initiatives. Another $27 million was achieved through revenue enhancements, including growth in tuition and fee revenue as a result of enrollment growth, greater indirect cost recovery on grants, and entrepreneurial activity. $7.1 million was reallocated to strategic priorities, including salary increases for ranked faculty. Vice President Krawitz told us that $40 million in savings from using Build America bonds and $12 million in benefit cost savings from changes to the benefit plans are not included in these numbers because they occurred after the end of the fiscal year. Clearly, the university is taking its stewardship responsibility seriously as it tightens its belt in response to the economic crisis. Finally, Vice President Krawitz reported on the President's accountability measures and initiatives designed to promote accountability and transparency regarding the university's performance. The staff has created a book, which I just showed you, for each board member that includes the accountability measures and detailed descriptions of each measure. There are 80 measures that are aligned with the 5 strategic themes. For each campus, the set of measures has 3 years' worth of historical performance information, benchmarks for appropriate and comparative measures with peer institutions. In addition, President Forsey is working with the chancellors to set 3-year target goals on selected measures, which we heard about this morning. The Board of Curators will be provided with a comprehensive report in December, and this will be our first report tying in to their hard work. Consistent with President Forsey's pledge last year, outside consultants have been engaged to audit the measures and provide assurances that the measures are valid and reasonable. I understand this audit is underway and will receive this report at the December board meeting. This set of measures will allow us to demonstrate to our stakeholders, including the public and members of the General Assembly, that we have a clear vision of where we are headed and we are measuring our progress so we can make course corrections as needed in order to achieve our goals. Okay, so that's the meat of it, and so when you hear about President Forsey and the rest of the crew, that's kind of a backdrop for the newer board members. We also heard reports from Vice President Steve Graham, who reviewed the accreditation process. President Forsey reported on the status of his 5 system focus areas for 2009. He also had a discussion of national higher ed issues with particular emphasis on funding. And then Senior Associate Vice President David Russell gave an impact update on Senate Bill 389. And overall, after we concluded that meeting, I had 2 or 3 board members come up to me and said that was the best board meeting and most informative committee or board meeting that we've had since they've been on the board. So if you have not had a chance to review this system accountability measures, I'd strongly recommend you bring that to each board meeting and just measure how you're doing. Great job, Gary. I think we're moving in the right direction. I think the Resources and Planning Committee, I think we've got a great team in place, and I think this university, the taxpayers and the university staff and employees should be proud of their management at this point. Good job.
Thank you, David. That concludes, I think, our business. Kathy's waving at me.
I'm waving. Could we have a motion to approve your committee meeting minutes?
Oh, okay. I guess that's from your committee.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Curator Bradley?
Aye.
Curator Russell?
Yes.
Curator Wassinger? Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Now, I think that concludes the business in the open session, unless there's other matters that are good. The order. We did not conclude the executive session yesterday, so we need to reconvene the executive session of the board. So we're going to do it here, Kathy.
We're actually going to go back up to Skull Cup. There will be a brief break for you to do a press conference. Everyone can get lunch. We'll meet up in Skull Cup.
So tell me that order of it. Huh? Right now? Okay. We're going to have our, I guess, president.
Bill and I will have a 10-minute detour on the way up to the closed session, so we'll see you in a few minutes.
Okay, Kathy, we're through it here, so we should clean this out.
Let me tell you that because of the ball game tonight, they need to do a pretty quick flip.
Okay.
So I don't want you to have to lug everything upstairs, but let's just stash everything in one corner, and then you can come back to it. Okay.